Respected citizen Chen Zifeng, you have been selected for frontline conscription evaluation. The alien war requires your contribution. Your family will receive generous compensation. That's how my morning started. A voice in my head, calm, polite, absolutely certain, like a flight attendant announcing that the plane has no wings. The voice belonged to the goddess of wisdom, the AI that runs basically everything in human civilization, and she had just told me I won a lottery I never entered. One ticket in 100,000. Prize, a free trip to the alien battlefield, where the average life expectancy of a guy like me is measured in minutes, possibly in screams. Compensation, I said to my ceiling. You're going to compensate my parents? For me? The compensation package includes housing upgrades and a lifetime stipend, the goddess confirmed, because sarcasm is not in her training data. Here's the thing about me. My name is Chen Zifeng. I'm 19. I live on Kanglan Star, a planet so average that its main export is being unremarkable. And until that morning, my biggest problem was what to eat for lunch. Humanity has spread across the galaxy. We're at war with roughly everything that has more than two eyes, and the whole machine runs on evolvers, people who cultivated special evolution pads and punch monsters for a living. I was not an evolver. I was a guy with a couch. So I did what any reasonable man does when the government schedules his funeral. I asked customer service for a loophole. Goddess, how do I get out of conscription? 3 exemption paths exist. 1, become a ranked evolver. 2, reach 4th class citizenship. 3, reach 2nd class citizenship through an approved special contribution, such as creating a new evolution path. Option 1 took normal people years. Option 2 took decades. Option 3 was so absurd that nobody had done it in centuries. Creating a new evolution path is the kind of thing legendary grand scholars do, and they start at rank 8 and have beards older than my planet. I had 4 months until evaluation. Cool. Very cool. Love that for me. And that night, while I was lying in bed calculating how many push-ups stood between me and not dying, something knocked on the inside of my skull. Not a headache, a door. A door the size of a continent, standing in the dark behind my eyes, carved with patterns that made my teeth ache when I looked at them. Information poured into me the way water pours into a drowning man. It called itself the Gate of Myriad Realms. It had exactly one function, and that function was insane. It could throw my consciousness into another world, drop me into a body there, and let me live an entire life, 20 years if I could survive them, while 10 minutes passed at home. 20 years there, 10 minutes here. And whatever I learned, whatever I trained, whatever my soul figured out, that stayed with me. I'm going to be honest about my first reaction. It was not noble. I did not think about protecting humanity. I thought, the draft board is going to lose their minds. There was one more line in the fine print, and it was the best line of all. The gate came bundled with a talent, fused to my soul, called Heaven-Defying Comprehension. Simple description. I understand things. All things. Instantly. Completely. Terminally. Show me a bird taking off, and I'll invent a movement technique. Show me your secret family sword art once, and it's my secret family sword art now, plus improvements, plus a customer satisfaction survey. The government's surveillance updates at dawn. The gate was ready at midnight. I wasn't going to sit around holding a farewell party. I lay down, closed my eyes, and let the door swallow me. New world. Here I come. I opened my eyes and I was 3 years old. I want you to sit with that for a second. One moment I'm a 19-year-old draft dodger. The next I'm a toddler in gray robes, standing in a courtyard full of bald men, holding a broom taller than my entire biography. I had become a novice monk at the Great Zen Temple in a world called the Great Zhang Dynasty, a classic martial arts world. Swords, chi, masters jumping over rooftops, and my current rank in this world was child who sweeps, 20 years on the clock, body of a bean sprout. Fine. Let's see what this comprehension talent actually does. A sparrow landed on the courtyard wall, hopped twice, and took off. Text scrolled across my vision. Comprehension complete. I had just invented a lightness technique. From a bird. From watching a bird exist for 4 seconds. I stood there holding my broom, 3 years old, staring at the empty wall where the sparrow used to be. Then I looked down. There was an earthworm working its way through the flower bed. Congratulations, said my soul. You have now mastered the art of burrowing. I spent that afternoon staring at everything that moved. By dinner, I had a full combat curriculum taught entirely by wildlife, and I had learned the single most important fact of my new life. This world was a buffet, and I was the only one with a fork. The real jackpot came at evening practice. The monks gathered in the main courtyard to train their foundation art, the Arhat fist. A solid, honest, thousand-year-old set of movements that generations of masters had polished like a river polishes a stone. I watched them run through it once, and my comprehension didn't just copy it, it fixed it. Every wasted motion, every inefficiency the ancestors never noticed, every place where the chi flow took the scenic route, my brain sanded them all off and handed me back something new. The great Arhat Buddha fist. Same family, higher floor. A superior art invented by a toddler during what was technically nap time. The abbot found out 3 days later when he caught me practicing behind the woodshed. I still remember his face. It went through several distinct religious experiences. He called the elders. The elders called the oldest monk in the temple, this ancient grandmaster with eyebrows so long he could have belted his robe with them, and they all stood in a circle watching a 3-year-old perform an improved version of their sacred inheritance. The long-browed elder knelt down, looked me in the eye, and asked, very carefully, who taught me? The fist taught itself, I said, because what was I supposed to say? A bird helped? That was the day I stopped being child who sweeps and became the Buddha's disciple Ji Hong, which was their polite way of saying, we have no idea what this kid is, and we are choosing to be religious about it. The long-browed grandmaster took me as his personal student. 2 months later, I had outgrown everything he could teach me, which was awkward for both of us, so they gave up on teachers entirely and just moved me into the scripture pavilion, the temple's library of every martial manual they'd collected in 1,000 years. They gave the buffet kid the keys to the kitchen. I read the Jie Cui Jing, their supreme body-tempering classic, in 3 days. Then I rewrote it. My version tempered body, blood, and spirit at once, and, this was the part that made the elders sit down on the floor, it could be practiced safely by beginners. Their version was a mountain path with no guardrails. Mine had stairs and a handrail and a little gift shop at the summit. By the time I turned 8, I'd been through every manual in the pavilion, and I'd learned this world's dirty secret. Breaking through to Great Grandmaster, the peak of their system, killed 96 to 99 people out of every 100 who tried. The whole world treated a breakthrough like a coin flip against death, because their techniques were heirlooms, beautiful, revered, and never once debugged. So I debugged them. I sat in the pavilion and wrote 163 safe breakthrough methods. Different body types, different chi foundations, different temperaments, a route for everyone, guardrails included. It took me a few months. It would have saved this world 10,000 geniuses a century. Then I used method number 1 on myself and broke through to Great Grandmaster. I was 8. The previous youngest Great Grandmaster in recorded history had been 41, and they built a statue of him. The elders sensed the breakthrough from across the temple. You can't really hide it. The air pressure changes, birds relocate, and came running with their robes hiked up. I handed them my notes. Detailed methodology, novice to grandmaster, complete with warnings and troubleshooting. These were men in their 80s who had watched their brothers gamble against death for one realm their entire lives. And here was a stack of paper that made the gamble a staircase, written by a child who came up to their belts. Several of them cried. The living-browed elder held the manual for the tempering art I'd left him. I'd calculated it gave him a decent shot at Great Grandmaster even at his age, and his hands shook so hard the pages rattled. For the record, this is the moment I got addicted. Not to power, to this. You hand somebody a piece of paper, and their whole world tilts. I have chased that feeling across more worlds than I can comfortably explain, and it started with an old monk crying into a manual behind a woodshed. 5 more years in the pavilion. At 13, I ran out of world. I don't mean I got bored, I mean the system itself capped out. Great Grandmaster was the ceiling, and I was pressed against it like a fly on a window. So I did the thing this world considered impossible. I broke the ceiling and invented the floor above it. Inner chi condensed into something denser, brighter, something that made lightning crawl out of empty air when I punched. There was no name for the realm because nobody had ever stood in it. I named it the mythical realm, because when you're 13 and writing history, subtlety is not on the menu. Then I walked down the mountain to go see the world, and on the way down, the wind hit the pines, and I comprehended a movement art from that too. 9 steps of divine wind, invented by weather. Here's how famous I was by then, by the way. I stopped at a roadside inn, and the storyteller inside was doing a whole dramatic set about the Buddha's disciple of the great Zen temple, This mythical figure who was, according to the performance, 9 feet tall with golden skin and eyes like temple bells. I was sitting in the audience, 13 years old, eating noodles, listening to my own legend get 100% of the facts wrong. Best meal of my life. I learned my destination at a roadside monastery called Pudu Temple from monks complaining about history. The Bright Moon Palace sect had lost its founding manuals generations ago, they said, lost them the same way everyone had, because the founder of the Great Zheng dynasty, centuries back, had done something gloriously paranoid. As a condition of unifying the realm, he'd copied the secret manual of every sect in the world into the imperial palace's martial hall. Every sword art, every palm technique, every breathing method, one building, in the capital, under the throne's seal. The sects had grumbled for 300 years and done nothing, because what do? Invade the palace? For a normal martial artist, that hall was a treasury. For me, it was a syringe of pure, uncut comprehension, and it was locked behind 8,000 guards and several centuries of imperial protocol. A monk I met, former great Zen man, now the Empress Dowager's favorite, offered to get me inside. He had a plan. It involved 6 months of court introductions, 3 factions, 2 carefully arranged banquets, and a marriage I would be politely declining at the right moment. 6 months of politics. I did the math on that. Then I walked up to the palace gates and used Lion's Roar. Lion's Roar is a Buddhist technique. It is exactly what it sounds like. I put my chi behind my voice and announced, at a volume normally reserved for divine judgment, I wish to visit the martial hall. The sound rolled through the capital like weather. 8,000 guards drew their weapons. Palace grandmasters came over the walls like startled cats. And then everyone actually looked at what was standing at the gate, at the pressure rolling off a realm this world didn't have a word for, and 8,000 men decided, with impressive unanimity, to kneel. The emperor came out personally. So did the royal ancestor, a peak Grand Master who'd been in seclusion for 30 years and looked deeply annoyed to be awake. There was a lot of trembling courtesy, and then the old ancestor said the line that still makes me smile in my sleep. Honored Master, if you wished to enter, why all the noise? You could have simply walked in. He wasn't wrong. Nothing in that palace could have stopped me. I had frightened 8,000 people as a formality. It seemed politer to knock, I said. They gave me the martial hall. Honestly, at that point, they'd have given me the throne and thrown in the Empress Dowager's favorite monk as a bonus. 6 months in the hall and I drained it dry. Every sect's masterpiece, comprehended, improved, filed away. And I still hadn't found the next ceiling. So I invented the world's first martial arts tournament, with a prize pool designed by someone who understands addiction. The top 10 would each receive 3 superior arts, and any Grand Master who challenged me personally would get a spirit-level technique, win or lose. Win or lose. Do you understand what that did? Every fighter on the continent looked at that offer and heard, free legendary loot, entry fee is 1 beating. The whole world came to the capital. Sects that had been feuding for 400 years shared boats. And I stood on a platform for a month, taking on all comers, farming 10,000 fighting styles through my comprehension like a man harvesting a field that plants itself. The Sword Saint of the South Sea came, half a step from Great Grand Master, this magnificent white-haired storm of a man who had crossed an ocean to use me as his stepping stone to legend. He announced this intention publicly, stepping stone, me. The fight lasted half an incense stick, and I spent most of it studying his sword intent, the way you'd study a nature documentary. When it was over, he sat on the platform for a while, looking at his sword, and said, to nobody in particular, that he had been a mayfly looking up at the blue sky. He still got his spirit technique. House rules. Best loyalty program in martial arts history. 8 more years of this. Farm, comprehend, refine. And I pushed past mythical into another realm nobody had a name for, so I named that one too. Carefree realm. Because at that point, honestly, that's what it was. And then, 20 years to the day, the gate lit up behind my eyes. I left the temple everything. Dozens of books in my own hand, the complete ladder, novice to beyond mythical, safe as stairs. The world's ceiling was about to become its floor, and I wouldn't be there to watch it, and that was fine. Somewhere down the centuries, some sweeping kid was going to open book 1. I closed my eyes in the Great Zheng dynasty. I opened them in my bedroom, 19 years old, 10 minutes older. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from mismatch. 20 years of martial memory stuffed into a teenager's body with the muscle tone of a boiled noodle. Somewhere outside, a delivery drone hummed past. 10 minutes. I'd lived 20 years in 10 minutes, and the world hadn't even finished its evening. Then I felt it. The chi. Faint, thin, but real, condensing in this body the way it had in the other one. The realm carried over. The knowledge carried over. All of it. Mine. I laughed alone in the dark like an absolute maniac, and I regret nothing. My little sister Chenjie picked that exact moment to barge in with cake. Mom says stop being weird in the dark and eat something. Why are you sitting like that? I was sitting cross-legged in a full lotus meditation posture, because for the last 20 years, that was simply how a person sits. To her, I'd been normal at dinner 2 hours ago. I unfolded myself, took the cake, and ate the entire thing while she watched with rising outrage, because apparently a slice of that cake had been promised to her. And Grandmaster reflexes do not come with a portion control patch. She yelled, vowing revenge. 2 decades away from home, and my first battle back was over dessert. I'd missed her for 20 years. She'd missed me for the length of a commercial break. Now, to business. I was still on a countdown to conscription, and my exit was door number 3. Create a new evolution path, get certified as a special contributor, jump to second-class citizenship. Yesterday, that had been a joke. Today, I was a man with 20 years of martial science in his head and a talent that turned understanding into an industrial process. It took me 2 hours on the couch. 2 hours to translate the martial arts of the great Zheng dynasty into something main-world humans could cultivate, restructure the chi pathways for people marinated in cosmic energy, adjust the foundations, write the beginner and grandmaster chapters clean. I called it the martial scripture. Then I uploaded it to the goddess of wisdom the way you'd submit a tax form, and went to get a snack. I hadn't reached the fridge when the goddess spoke, and her voice had changed. Less flight attendant, more cathedral. Citizen Chen Zifeng, your submission has been evaluated by my main consciousness. Main consciousness. The planetary node handles birthdays and parking tickets. The main consciousness handles wars. Preliminary rating. A potential Tier 3 evolution path, ranked 93rd on the Changlan Evolution Ranking. Reward, 2,000 merit points. Let me translate. The Changlan Evolution Ranking is the leaderboard of every cultivation path on this planet, and it had not changed in 560 years. It was less a leaderboard and more a monument. 93rd place meant my 2-hour couch project had just elbowed past cultivation systems that entire clans had polished for millennia. That night, the planetary governor was woken up by the goddess to be informed his planet had produced a new ranked path. I know this because history remembers where important men were when the board moved. He reportedly asked the goddess 3 times if the notification was a drill. Me? I spent 1,000 of those merit points on second-class citizenship, and the conscription notice dissolved out of my file like sugar in rain. 4 months of dread solved in 1 evening, with change left over. The universe had tried to draft me, and I had responded with a couch, a snack, and paperwork. Second-class citizenship, it turned out, was not just a draft exemption. It was a lifestyle product. Monthly stipend, legal immunities, access to the virtual world's restricted floors. A 5 million welcome gift, a 20 million interest-free credit line, and a 50% discount on government housing. That last one matters for the next scene, because the next scene is one of my favorite memories of that whole year. I went to buy a mansion. Shuiyue Community, top-end estate district of Dongning City, the kind of place with fountains that judge you. And at the sales office, behind the counter, wearing the crisp uniform of a junior consultant, my old classmate, Sma Tao. We'd graduated the same month. He'd landed this prestige job and mentioned it at graduation approximately 400 times. He saw me walk in, and his face did the thing, the polite, pained smile of a man preparing to explain to a broke classmate that browsing is free, but the brochures are counted. Chen Zifeng, here to look around? Here to buy, I said. Number 32, I think, the one with the south garden. He laughed, not meanly, the way you laugh at a good joke between old friends, one of whom cannot afford a garden gnome. And that's when his manager came sprinting across the marble, actually sprinting, tie over his shoulder like a windsock, because the office system had just flagged my citizen ID. He hit the brakes, bowed at an angle usually reserved for state funerals, and started apologizing to me for the wait. There had been no wait. He apologized for it anyway, twice, in case the first one didn't take. Second-class citizen Chen, the discount. Allow me to personally, I signed for Mansion 32 at half price, while Ma Tao stood frozen mid-laugh, holding a brochure, running a full system reboot behind his eyes. As I left, I told him the garden was lovely and he should visit. I'm told he sat down for a while after that. The classmates group chat, incidentally, held a coffee meetup that same week. Old faces, new bragging. Jia Liang, military uncle, big voice, spent an hour promising everyone he could pull strings to get me off the conscription list, as a favor, because that's what friends are for. He was mid-speech about his uncle's connections when I got up to leave early, and a government hover car with official plates descended outside the cafe window to pick me up. Whisper quiet, doors like wings. The chat afterward, I'm told, went through several stages. First, how is he off the conscription list already? Then, somebody with more curiosity than sense tried to look up my citizen file, and the goddess of wisdom herself dropped a formal warning into their terminal. Unauthorized queries on this citizen constitute a Class 2 violation. Continued attempts will be referred to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court. For Googling me, the chat went very, very quiet after that. Jia Liang never did finish explaining about his uncle. To be officially registered as an evolver, you take a combat assessment at the Evolver Association, a virtual gauntlet, Tier 1, 12 stages, calibrated monsters. Most new evolvers scrape through 2 or 3 stages and frame the certificate. I broke all 12. Not passed. Broke. The simulation kept escalating, and I kept deleting whatever it sent until it ran out of Tier 1 entirely, at which point it summoned a Tier 2 construct out of sheer institutional panic. That one beat me in 3 moves. My noodle body was still Tier 1, no arguing with physics, and I spent all 3 moves memorizing how it moved. The proctors watched a fresh registrant lose to a Tier 2 and visibly begin learning from it, in real time, like a chess computer having a religious awakening. President Fan of the association came down personally to shake my hand. President Fan is one of the 5 most important people in Dongning City. He held my hand in both of his the way you hold a lottery ticket in a wind. Which brings us to the family banquet. Ah, the family banquet. My extended family had heard rumors, something about Chen Zifeng, citizenship, evolvers, and organized a dinner to establish the natural order of things. Uncle Chen Yong, the successful one, spent the appetizers offering me a job. 20,000 a month, his personal magnanimity, delivered at a volume calibrated for the whole table. I happen to know his company's actual books. Second-class citizens can query commercial registries, and his empire was mostly loans wearing a suit. I said I'd think about it. His son Chen Lei smirked into his soup, the smirk of a cousin who has already decided how this dinner goes. Then the doorbell started. First, the founder of the Chu Group, one of the city's real corporations, who had come, personally, to apologize to me because his grandson had been rude in a group chat. The table went quiet. Uncle Yong's chopsticks stopped moving. Second, Colonel Jing, actual military brass, with gifts and honorifics. The table went quieter. Chen Lei's smirk began experiencing technical difficulties. Third, President Fan of the Evolver Association, who bowed to my parents, and asked in front of everyone whether I would honor Dongning City by representing it in the Planetary Arena tournament next year. Top 5,000 receive 50 million. He said he'd take care of everything. He said it was they who would be grateful. My mother, who 2 weeks ago had been worried I'd never find a stable job, sat there with her tea frozen halfway to her mouth, doing slow arithmetic on her own life. My father silently attempted to determine which side of the family my genes came from. The relatives spent the rest of the evening rearranging their entire personalities in real time. Uncle Yong's job offer was never mentioned again by anyone, including Uncle Yong, who now laughed warmly at everything I said, including things that were not jokes. The best revenge isn't living well, it's making your relatives watch the doorbell. 6 months later, I'd uploaded the mythical and carefree chapters, the realms I'd invented past this world's old ceiling, and the ranking moved again. 93rd to 78th, another 3,000 merit points in the account. The public had noticed by then, you don't move a 5-century leaderboard twice in 1 year without the internet developing opinions. The leading theory was that some hidden grand scholar from the central continent was running an experiment on Kanglin's star. Forums argued about which reclusive genius it might be. I read those threads at breakfast. There is no breakfast better than a forum confidently discussing which legendary elder you are. I bought a military-grade nutrient tank with the prize money, 200 years of body maintenance, the kind of thing deep space crews use, and installed it in the mansion's basement. Because the gate was glowing again. Second trip. And the preview this time made the monk world look like a petting zoo. 80 years of stay, a world with a higher ceiling, and the taste of the place through the door was all storm and iron. I climbed into the tank, sealed the lid, and let the door take me. 80 years. 2 hours of local time. My mother thought I was napping. The second world did not give me a broom and a courtyard. The second world gave me a massacre. I arrived as a newborn, days old, wrapped in a blanket, in a fortress called Jung Family Fort, in a world named for its dragon tiger mountain. And on the night I arrived, the Wanmo sect came over the walls. Myriad Demons sect. 8 leaders and a protector come to erase one family from the map for the crime of being in the way. My father in that life was Zheng Gang. I knew him for 1 hour. He carried me through the burning fort to a hidden tunnel, put me in my mother's arms, and turned around to hold the entrance. He did not say anything dramatic. He checked the blanket was tight, looked at my mother, and went back toward the noise. My mother, Wang Mei, ran with me until the pursuers found our trail. Then she put me down in the roots of a tree, kissed my forehead, and ran the other way, loud, so they would follow her instead. She didn't come back. I want to make a joke here. I'm not going to. So, infant, alone, winter forest. A wolf found me before dawn. I could hear it circling, that patient, unhurried crunch of paws on frost. And this is where my talent showed me what it really was, because it doesn't just comprehend sword arts, it comprehends survival. Dying of cold, my body figured out a hibernation breathing pattern that dropped my heartbeat to almost nothing. Hunted by scent, it derived a dead wood breathing art that made me smell like frozen bark. The wolf walked past me 3 times, close enough that I felt its breath, and decided I was a log. 2 days I lasted like that. 2 days, 0 food, -20, personal record I hope never to defend. And when I finally heard human footsteps, a traveling Taoist, hurrying somewhere, I made a command decision and cried at maximum volume with impeccable timing. The Taoist was called Jia Zheng, and he had been my father's friend, riding hard toward a fort that no longer existed. He dug me out of the roots, read the family token in my blanket, and stood there in the snow for a long time, holding his dead friend's son. He took me home to Dragon Tiger Mountain, to the Celestial Master's residence, the oldest, tallest sect of that world, and raised me as his own. Let me tell you about the ceiling of that world, because it matters. In 6,800 years, that world produced exactly 36 Celestial Masters, cultivators who reached the summit realm. 36, ever. And for the last 500 years, none. The title had gone from rank to relic. Kids grew up on stories about Celestial Masters the way you grew up on dinosaurs. I spent 10 years being an ordinary orphan disciple with a tragic backstory. Publicly, I swept and studied and was politely mediocre. Privately, I rebuilt my cultivation from memory and quietly hit the ceiling of what this world's arts could give a 10-year-old, which, thanks to a higher world ceiling and a better energy density, already put me somewhere north of everything the monk world had. Then came the sword tomb. Once every 20 years, the sect takes its most promising disciples down into a mountain vault where 10,000 swords stand blade down in the stone, every blade of every master who ever died in the sect's service. The disciples walk among them, and if you're lucky, some old sword hums at you, and you're allowed to take it as your own. Most people leave with a respectable mid-tier blade. It's a graduation ceremony with extra steps. They gave us a sword intent perception technique for the walk, a little mental exercise for hearing the blades. I upgraded it on the stairs down. By the time my foot hit the tomb floor, I wasn't hearing 10,000 swords. I was hearing 10,000 life stories, and all of them turned to look at me at once. At the deepest point of the tomb, past where anyone was supposed to go, there was a sword in a stone dais that no one had touched in living memory. The true martial sword, the founding blade, the one the first Celestial Master used 6,800 years ago. It didn't hum at me, it yanked. I pulled it out because it would have been rude not to, and the entire mountain shook, 10,000 swords screaming in their stone at once, elders across the sect dropping their teacups, masters on distant peaks of that world looking up for meditation and asking their disciples what year it was. The blade settled into my hand with the smug weight of an heirloom that has finally found someone worth haunting, and somewhere above me, an entire sect's leadership collectively realized their tragic little orphan was now holding the founder's sword. Official announcement within the week. For the first time in 500 years, a future celestial master had been chosen. Me, age 10. They moved me to the Zhenwu scripture repository with the other 4 seed children, and the sect began planning the next 50 years of my carefully supervised ascension. I lasted about 3 years before I broke their entire theology. Here's the thing they don't tell outsiders. The secret of the Celestial Masters is that the true martial sword contains the essence of 2 powers, Extreme Jing and Extreme Cheng, Tai Yin and Tai Yang. Every Celestial Master in history picked one of the 2 and rode it to the summit. Jing or Cheng, moon or sun, pick a lane. I read the founder's notes, sat with the sword for a season, and asked the obvious question, why not both? The answer came in the form of the entire senior sect descending on me like an avalanche of grandfathers. Both was heresy. Both was suicide. The 3rd generation Celestial Master, a genius the likes of which the world hadn't seen since, had tried to fuse Jing and Cheng and died of it, spectacularly, and they'd spent 6,000 years telling that story as a warning. Master Ming Hui, my nominal teacher, went so far as to offer to burn 20 years of his own lifespan on a purging ritual to scrub the idea out of my cultivation before it took root. He was ready to spend his own life to save me from my homework. I refused, respectfully. He stormed off, less respectfully. Elder Ping Yang called me insane in open council. The only one who didn't fight me was Jia Zheng. The man who'd pulled me out of the tree roots came to my room that night, sat down, and was quiet for a while. Your father, he said finally, never wanted a celestial master. He wanted a son who'd get to live how he chose. Cultivate what you want. I'll handle the elders. I've been given plenty of treasures across a lot of worlds. That sentence is still in my top 3. So I did it. In the Zhenwu repository, over 8 years, on a foundation I tore down and rebuilt around both extremes at once. Tai Yin Infinite in the left hand, Tai Yang Infinite in the right, and me in the middle, learning to hold moonrise and noon in one chest without becoming a crater. The ancients dared not, the moderns could not. I'll do it. That's roughly what I wrote on the wall of my practice room. And if that sounds arrogant, please remember I was being warned off by the ghost of a man who'd been dead 6,000 years. Meanwhile, the world outside was going wrong. The Wanmo sect, yes, the same people who'd made me an orphan on arrival day, I hadn't forgotten, I was getting to it, had dug up the legacy of the original demon sect, an ancient horror that the first celestial master had broken 6,800 years ago. Armed with it, they'd stopped hiding. Sects were going dark across the map. My friend Duan Hui and the other seed disciples got sent down the mountain for field experience while the fortress walls got taller. And then the Wanmo sect did the math on the sect that had prophesied a new celestial master, decided to cancel the prophecy before it matured, and came up Dragon Tiger Mountain with everything they had. Their leader had eaten the original demon legacy whole, half a step beyond the summit realm. He came through our outer formations like a man wading through wet paper, with a horde behind him, and partway up the mountain, his shadow serpent ambushed Jia Zheng, the man who raised me, and left him comatose, demonic qi coiled around his heart. I was in the repository when I felt Jia Zheng fall. I remember exactly what I was doing, holding the last stitch of the fusion, the point where 8 years of work either becomes one thing or becomes a crater. So I finished it. Jing and Cheng closed into one circle, and the circle turned, and the thing the ancients dared not do sat down in my chest, calm as a pond. Outside, 6,800 years of sect history felt it happen. Every sword in the sword tomb started singing. Then I walked out to meet the invasion. Down the mountain, on the clouds. I want to be precise because this image bought me a world, the sea of clouds around Dragon Tiger Mountain, the invading horde looking up mid-war cry, and one figure in disciples' robes walking down the sky like it was a staircase he'd paid for. The 37th Celestial Master, first in 500 years, arriving at his own coronation without an invitation. The Wanmo leader tried to run. Credit where due, he assessed the situation instantly and correctly. He split into 6 shadows, 6 directions, a technique that had saved his life 9 times. The Taiji field caught all 6. The extreme of Jing is Cheng. The extreme of Cheng is Jing. There is no direction out of a circle. He died between one heartbeat and the next, and I drew the true martial sword once, and 7 of his 9 vice leaders and a few thousand of his demons stopped being a horde. The rest knelt. So did my own sect, which was awkward. Master Ming Hui knelt lowest of all, the man who'd fought me hardest over the fusion, pressing his forehead into the stone in front of everyone. I picked him up by the shoulders. He'd been wrong for the right reasons. That's the only kind of wrong worth forgiving on the spot. Jia Zheng woke up 3 days later, cured. Pulling demonic qi out of a body is trivial when both extremes obey you. He looked at me, looked at the kneeling mountain, and said, "I take one nap, and you become celestial master." Then he cried, and pretended he hadn't, and I pretended I hadn't seen, and that's how men who've buried a family together say, "Congratulations." The next 60 years, the histories of that world call the Jiazi Purge. I call it finishing what my parents' murderers started. I went down the mountain, and I did not stop. The Wanmo headquarters went first. Their surviving vice leader had rebuilt in a canyon fortress with 3 escape tunnels, which tells you he'd studied what happened to his boss. I collapsed the tunnels first, out of courtesy, so he wouldn't waste his last hour running. Then their patron in the courts, a demon named Guo Long, who had spent decades wearing silk in the Great Liang dynasty, whispering in an emperor's ear while feeding on his prisoners. I didn't kill that one. I simply mailed the evidence to the Great Liang throne and let the dynasty discover what it had been petting. They executed him in their own square, before their own people, and the Great Liang emperor sent me a letter of thanks so terrified it read like a confession. Then north. The last inheritor of the original demon sect's living line had gone to ground in the ice palace of the northern plains, under the protection of the Lord of the North, a genuinely powerful man who had made a genuinely bad sponsorship deal. I walked into that frozen throne room, killed the inheritor at the foot of the throne mid-plea, and then stood there while the Lord of the North performed the fastest political realignment of the century, courting at his dead guest, looked at me, and offered tea. Good tea, too. He kept his palace, his lands, and his life, and to this day the Northern Plains celebrates an annual festival whose true origin story is, our Lord chose the correct beverage. The desert kingdoms that farmed captive villages for blood cultivation, the fortune teller on the southern road who read my palm went gray and refused payment. "Your fate line," he said, "isn't a line, it's a ledger." And I let him live for the honesty, and he became famous as the only oracle who ever refused the Celestial Master's coin. One by one, every devil head with a name, until for 60 straight years, in the entire world, no one dared to call himself a demon out loud. Job title discontinued for lack of survivors. And at the bottom of it all, in the ruins of the original demon sect, the site itself moves. It took me a decade of triangulation to pin it. I found the source. The original demonic spirit. A legacy intelligence from some higher realm, older than the sect that worshipped it, the thing that had survived even the first celestial master. It rose up out of the dark to devour me, blazing with 6 millennia of hoarded techniques. And I farmed it. I'm not proud of how long I dragged that fight out. Actually, no, I'm extremely proud. Months. Every time it pulled some antique demonic art out of its archive, my comprehension shoplifted the technique mid-cast. I kept it alive the way you keep a vending machine plugged in, and when it finally ran out of inventory, when it threw its last secret at me and I caught that too, I ground it to powder between Jing and Cheng like grain between millstones. The first Celestial Master could only seal it. I invoiced it first. What was left after that was quieter. I engraved my Taiji art into the Celestial Master sword and set it in the tomb for whoever earns it in some future century. I trained an orphan named Liang Min, sharp-eyed kid, good hands, terrible tea, until the world had its 38th Celestial Master, while its 37th was still around. 2 suns in the sky for the first time in the world's whole history, a golden age with witnesses. And on the last day, I went back to Zheng family fort. Rebuilt now, full of strangers. The graveyard was on the hill. 2 markers, side by side. The man who checked my blanket. The woman who ran loud. I told them what became of the people who did it. All of it. It took a while. Then the gate lit up, and I let the body I'd worn for 80 years dissolve into the wind off the mountain. No corpse, no tomb, no relic to fight over. Let the world keep the story instead. There will never be another Celestial Master Zheng. There was only ever the one, and he was made of wind the whole time. I woke up in a nutrient tank in my own basement, 2 hours older, with 80 years of moonlight and sword song in my head, and somewhere upstairs, my mother was calling me for dinner. I uploaded the Celestial Phenomena and Jing Cheng chapters that same week, and this time, the Goddess of Wisdom did not answer alone. 3 voices came back: wisdom, freedom, justice. All 3 ultimate goddesses of the human alliance, convening over my homework like a tribunal. The fusion of 2 extreme attributes had apparently made their combined computing power sit up straight. Final ruling. The theoretical ceiling of the Martial Dao evolution path was now assessed at 6th order. 6th order. Starfalling class. The tier where a person shoots down celestial bodies as a self-expression. My couch project now had, on paper, the same ceiling as humanity's elite cultivation systems, and the reward said so: 20,000 merit points, an amount usually associated with battlefield heroics. I promoted myself to 3rd-class citizen and discovered my favorite loophole in the entire Alliance legal code. Citizenship promotion wipes your outstanding central bank loans. It's a reward mechanism. It is also, if you have absolute confidence in your next promotion, an infinite money press. I maxed out my credit line, bought a vial of Cheng liquid and a case of Jing marrow, concentrated treasures perfectly matched to a Jing Cheng cultivator, consumed the evidence, then promoted, and watched the debt evaporate. The bank thanked me for my contribution to humanity. I thanked them for their contribution to me. Everyone was thanked. Nobody was informed. The evolution ranking updated that night. 78th to 8th. 8th. Top 10. On a board that hadn't moved in 560 years, sandwiched between pabs owned by bloodline dynasties who had held those slots since before my city existed. Somewhere in a tower, the Zhang family, hereditary keepers of slot number 7, reportedly held an emergency meeting about the anonymous path breathing on their necks. The forums escalated from "which hidden grand scholar is doing this" to "which hidden grand scholar is doing this and why won't he answer meshins?" I had 10,000 unread private letters in the virtual world. I read exactly none of them, and honestly, the unread counter became a little hobby of mine, a Tamagotchi of fame. My family, meanwhile, got upgrades. I walked my parents through the Jia Chui Shi Sui tempering art, told them it was an imported wellness potion program, which was technically a lie shaped like a kindness, and within a month, both of them were registered evolvers. My mother now opens jars with 2 fingers and pretends that was always the case. Chunjie demanded the potion too and was informed she was too young, which she took with the grace of a small typhoon. 2 personal firsts from that stretch deserve their own lines. First, flight. Real flight, not hover cars, not simulations. My realm crossed the threshold where a body can hold itself against the sky, and the Goddess of Wisdom, unprompted, opened a private air corridor over the Eastern Ocean and blanked the sensor grid along it so nobody would film the anomaly. I spent an evening walking on wind 2 kilometers above the water, 80 years of other men's flying techniques finally running on my own hardware, and I understand now why every immortal in every legend looks smug. It's not the power, it's the commute. Second, fan mail. After the ranking jump, my virtual world inbox crossed 10,000 unread messages, clan heads, academies, matchmakers, one persistent noodle company offering a sponsorship to the mysterious Grand Scholar's planet of residence. I answered none of them, and the counter became my favorite pet. Some men keep fish. I kept an anxiety aquarium and fed it by existing. Then came the arena. President Fan's tournament was arriving, and I'd promised to fight for Dongning City. The team met for the first time in a private lounge. Ke Xuan, the psychic, He Jian, the bloodline knight, and Ding Chang, a cheerful gadget guy whose pride and joy was a pair of combat analysis glasses that read an opponent's output rating. He pointed them at me as a party trick. The display said 2,000, respectable tier 1. He grinned. Then my chi circulated once, idly, the way you shift in a chair, and the number rolled. 4,000. 7. 9,000. Then the glasses caught fire, not dramatically. A modest, dignified little pop, a curl of smoke, and Ding Chang holding two smoldering lens frames, looking at me the way a meteorologist looks at a second sun. I bought him a new pair afterward. He never pointed them at me again. He wore them to every match, though, and every time I stepped on stage, he'd take them off, fold them, and put them in his pocket like he was shielding their innocence. Word of the burnt glasses got around, because word always gets around, and it traveled far enough up the food chain to reach Wen Hao, a young master from the Leiliang star region, a genuinely off-world rich kid whose family had bought him a replicated body of some special cosmic race. Born at nearly Tier 2, the kind of kid whose bloodline cost more than my planet's annual budget. He paid me 100 million for tutoring, then another 200, and what he got for his money was me bouncing him around a training hall with Taiji while he had the time of his life losing. What I got was better. Every minute he spent attacking me, my comprehension was quietly reverse engineering that perfect replicated body of his. The structure, the density, the blueprint of a physique built by the universe's luxury division. I filed the template away with a little mental bow. You never know when you'll need to renovate a body from the inside. Spoiler, I would need it soon, and the results would be imperial. The tournament itself, planet-wide, went like this. Team stage. We drew the giants of Zhaijing City in the bracket everyone called our funeral. I stood at the back the whole match and pressed the Taiji field down over their side like a lid, and my 3 teammates ran around scoring points on 4 world-class fighters who suddenly moved like they were underwater. The commentators lost it. Domain power is a 4th-tier phenomenon, and it was radiating from an unranked kid loitering at the back line. My family watched the broadcast at home. My mother baked celebration cakes. Cousin Chen Lei watched too, I'm told, with the expression of a man rethinking every dinner of his life. We took Dongning City into the planetary top 100 before falling to Blue Moon City and their Tier 3 Dream Evolver, a genuinely nasty matchup where I held their entire team solo for half an hour after my teammates went down and lost on points, and gained a nickname. The crowd watched me methodically dismantle opponents at walking pace for 30 minutes and christened me the cat, as in, what a cat does with a mouse it isn't hungry for. Not my choice. Fans with peculiar tastes appeared. Some of them made banners. We do not discuss the banners. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I broke into Tier 3, mid-tournament, between matches, in a hallway, because breakthroughs don't wait for narrative timing, and promoted to 4th-class citizen, same rank as the planetary governor. Lone wipe exploit executed once more with feeling. There were fewer than 20 Tier 3s under 100 on the whole planet. I was 19, going on 119, depending on how you do the math, and I've decided you don't get to choose how I do the math. Then the individual bracket, top 500. And here, the tournament stopped being a competition and became a nature documentary. There were real monsters in that bracket, to be fair. Kale, struck by lightning as a child, survived, now turns into lightning, enormous fan following, deserved every bit of it. Cheng Zifeng, who mid-season awakened a 6th-order bloodline live on camera and jumped 3 betting tiers overnight. And Gao Kai, quiet guy, decent smile, who cultivated something called the Ancient God Evolution Path, with a ghostly old master literally living on his shoulder, a palm-sized, white-bearded elder that only soul sensitives could see, coaching him between rounds. The odds makers ranked me 9th of the top 10. The fan polls were less generous. My own opponents surrendered on sight by the late rounds. A man named Du Lei walked onto the stage, looked at me, bowed, and walked off. And I respect him more than half the people who fought. And one more thing about that top 10. The organizer's assistant mentioned, very quietly, that this year's footage might reach the Red Gang Star Lord, the ruler of the entire star region, a being beyond 6th order who governs 1 million living planets, whose attention was the kind of thing planets renamed themselves for. The goddess of wisdom, when I asked, all but winked at me. Show your strength in the finals, citizen. Great opportunities favor the visible. Noted. But the finals were 2 weeks away, and the gate was glowing again. 3rd trip. The preview tasted like iron and worship, a higher world, 160 years of stay, and looming over all of it, the silhouette of a weapon the size of a mountain range. Some men spend their tournament break in a training camp. I spent mine in another dimension. Same thing, better exchange rate. The 3rd world put me in a womb. I'd like to report that the gate apologized. It did not. One moment, I'm consciousness in transit. The next, I'm floating in the dark with a heartbeat above me like weather, and I have 9 months of lead time and nothing to read. So I renovated. Remember Wen Hao, the rich kid whose flawless replicated body I'd studied for 300 million of his own money? I had the blueprint. I had 9 months of uninterrupted access to a body under construction. I rebuilt myself from the inside out, cell by cell, to luxury specification, and my poor, pregnant mother in that world spent the whole time confused about why she was craving century-old ginseng, which she ate by careful halves, which I metabolized into architecture. I was born as the only son of Emperor Xie Jing of Great Lei, one of the 36 kingdoms of the Central Plains. The man had 60-some daughters and had genuinely given up on an heir. When I arrived, he laughed so long and so hard the court physician was summoned twice. He named me Crown Prince at 5. My grand tutor resigned at 6, citing the professional impossibility of tutoring me, and recommended his own replacement. Nobody. A golden start. A pampered court. A doting father emperor. And underneath all of it, the worst secret of any world I have ever visited. It took me a few years of reading and eavesdropping to assemble, because this world hid its shape well. On the surface, 36 kingdoms, each with a royal family, each royal family guarding a divine weapon, a colossal sacred armament worshipped in an ancestral ground, source of the kingdom's legitimacy. Above the mortal realms stood the soldier envoys, chosen champions who bonded with the divine weapons and wielded borrowed god power. The fine print. The soldier envoys all died young. Everyone knew. Nobody said it. The court called it the price of glory. And the cultivation system of that entire world, 7 body-refining stages, hard stop, had a hole in it you could feel with your eyes closed. No soul cultivation. None. Min entire civilization's martial arts, and not one technique that touched the spirit. That's not an oversight, that's a diet plan. Because here's what my comprehension assembled from the pieces. The 36 divine weapons were not weapons. They were alive, intelligent, ancient, and they were farming us. The blood sacrifices at the ancestral grounds, feeding, the royal families, livestock managers with crowns, most of them too pious to know it. The soldier envoys, not champions, meals. A weapon bonds with a strong soul and drinks it slowly over a decade, and the empire celebrates the whole process with parades. And the crippled, soulless cultivation system, shaped by the weapons themselves over millennia to keep the herd meaty and harmless, cattle that can refine their muscles but never their spirits, tasty and safe. I figured all this out at age 9, sitting in a palace library, and I remember putting the scroll down very carefully because the alternative was vaporizing it. Then it got personal. My 7th sister, the one who snuck me candied fruit past the nurses, the one with the loud laugh, tested strong-souled at the selection rites. Strong-souled. In this world, that's not a compliment. That's a menu notation. She was chosen as the next soldier envoy of our kingdom's weapon, the Sun-Moon Spear, and the palace threw a festival while I stood on a balcony doing arithmetic about how long envoys live. I told my father, the emperor, that I would surpass the soldier envoys. He tousled my hair and said every boy dreams big. Sure, every boy. I went into the mountains that year, officially spiritual retreat, practically a valley with no witnesses, and rebuilt this world's entire body refining line into something with a spine. Recovered my own realm, integrated their 7 stages, pushed through the wall at the top and named the realm past it Martial God, then broke that ceiling too and called the next one Celestial. Meanwhile, I quietly built a spy network through the merchant guilds, because an emperor's son has pocket money, and pocket money buys ears. My father abdicated when I was grown, health, and I suspect relief, and I took the throne of Great Lei. Emperor at last, a cattle brand with a crown as far as the weapons were concerned. The state secrets came with the throne. Now I had names. Our weapon, the Sun-Moon Spear, had renewed its covenant 3 times in 36 centuries. That's 3 civilizational feeding cycles. And there was an opposition. The Reverse God Society, heretics who'd allied with the evil weapons, the Shattered Blades. Because 8,000 years ago, this world had hosted a war of 100 divine weapons, and the 64 losers had been broken into fragments that still hated the winners. An enemy of my enemy is a lead. I had the Reverse God Society's leader, Kong Chen, captured and brought to the palace. The man came in expecting hot irons, wearing his defiance like a coat, and instead I sat him down, poured tea, and told him what I knew about the weapons. All of it. His coat came off around the 3rd sentence. Nobody outside his society had ever said the truth out loud before, let alone an emperor, let alone with tea. The sample he eventually procured for me was a fragment of the Sacred Heart Mirror, a shard of a broken mind control weapon, still conscious, still hungry. They shipped it in a triple-sealed shrine box, and the moment the box opened in my study, the little horror reached for my mind with the practiced confidence of something that had enslaved 1,000 handlers. I let it in. It got about a finger's width past my eyes before it understood what it had walked into, and then it tried to leave, which was adorable. A black and white palm closed around it in the air. You're already here, no need to rush off, and I soul-read 8,000 years of history out of it like wringing a rag. And I finally saw the whole shape. The vision it carried, a sky full of weapons, 100 of them, wheeling and screaming over a burning continent, the war that broke 64 of them. And behind all of it, at the beginning of everything, the source, an ancient god, a wounded traveler from beyond the sky, fallen into this world in the deep past. It had healed here. And as Rent, it had done something no local ever understood. It forged 100 weapons out of the world's own rule essence, pulled laws of reality out of the world's bones and hammered them into artifacts to study the workings of power. Then it left through a rift at the world's northern edge, and its 100 lab instruments stayed behind, woke up, got hungry, and turned a planet into a ranch. The entire world was somebody's abandoned science experiment. The gods were leftover equipment. You want to know the truly obscene part? The weapons weren't even malicious in an interesting way. They farmed us with the bland entitlement of machinery doing what machinery does. Nobody had ever even inconvenienced them. I decided to be the inconvenience. Kung Chen and his entire Reverse God Society swore to me that month. He asked me once, near the end, quietly, "Are you human?" Because emperors don't do what I'd been doing. "Yes," I said, "and I've disliked those weapons for a very long time." Close enough to a founding charter. Step 1 took 50 years. Quietly, kingdom by kingdom, I collected fragments of the broken evil weapons, every shard a crystallized rule of this world, and my comprehension ate rule essence like fruit. Every fragment made me stronger in a way this world had no word for. Somewhere in those decades, I crossed into what the main world would call the edge of 4th tier, in a world whose official ceiling was barely 2nd. Step 2 was the evil weapon envoys. 18 of them, humans bonded to the shattered blades, led by a man called Gu Liang, who carried 90% of the splitting sky axe and a grudge the size of a dynasty. They planned their own war. The surviving 36 weapons, their scouts said, would ascend within a century to something called the Father God domain, after which nothing on this world could ever threaten them again. So the evil weapons wanted their decisive battle now, and they wanted it their way, which, given their track record, meant losing again, but with more fire. I walked into their war council alone. No guards, no announcement. 18 of the most dangerous people alive mid-argument, and an emperor strolls in and sits down in the head chair. They objected, every one of them, at once, with weapons. When the air settled, all 18 were pressed to the floor, and one by one I extracted the evil weapon fragments out of their bodies, gently, which they did not expect, and completely, which they expected less. They crawled up, gray-faced and empty-handed, 18 envoys, unenvied, in an afternoon. Kung Chen stood in the doorway watching, and later described the scene to his society using vocabulary generally reserved for religion. The fragments joined my collection. The envoys joined my payroll. I'm an emperor. We recycle. Step 3 needed bait, patience, and one very good actor. But first, a scheduling comedy 50 years in the making. The Ministry of Rights had been begging me for 5 decades through 3 successive ministers in memorials of escalating despair to perform the imperial homage at the ancestral ground, where emperors kneel to the sun-moon spear. I had postponed it my entire reign, on grounds ranging from droughts to a mildly sore knee. The 3rd minister had made it his life's quest. When I finally announced I would perform the homage, the man wept in open court. Wept. If he'd known why I was suddenly willing, he'd have wept harder and in a different key. Because the homage put me alone in the ancestral ground, at feeding distance with the sun-moon spear. The array went up the moment the doors closed, 81 evil weapon fragments in a ceiling lattice, 1 hour of guaranteed privacy from heaven and earth. The spear was mid-meal when the world went quiet around us. My 7th sister's successor was on the altar, and the great sacred silhouette of national worship was drinking. It noticed the seal. It began, unhurried, to merge back into heaven and earth, the weapon's one perfect escape, dissolving into the world's own rules, untouchable. I grabbed it out of the air with my bare hand. You have to understand what that meant to it. In 8,000 years, nothing had ever laid a hand on a divine weapon. It shrieked threats down my arm, the covenant, the curse. I will blight Great Lay for 1,000 years. And I squeezed, and the threats stopped. And I read it, memory by memory, all 10,000 years, the way I'd read its broken little cousin. Everything confirmed. The ancient god, the rift in the north, the feeding schedule. My seventh sister, somewhere in its archive, reduced to an entry in a ledger. I did not shatter it then. I had a use for it. But I want the record to show restraint occurred, and it was expensive. Because here was my problem. 35 more weapons, scattered across 35 kingdoms, each one capable of dissolving into heaven and earth the moment it felt real danger. Kill them one at a time, and the other 34 go incorporeal for a century. I didn't need 35 duels. I needed all of them in one place, arrogant, at the same time. So I built a war. First, the axe. From my fragment collection, I reassembled the Splitting Sky axe, the strongest of the broken evil weapons, restored to complete for the first time in 8,000 years, scrubbed its old malice out, and gave it to a recruit named Sun Bo, an orphan with a soul like a furnace door, the kind of kid who says thank you to the training dummy. He cried when the axe accepted him. The axe, I suspect, would have cried too if I'd left it the parts for it. Then, the message. For 10 years, my printing houses and merchant networks asked one question across 36 kingdoms, in pamphlets, in tea house songs, in graffiti. Why must our children be livestock? The truth about the envoys, the feeding, the ledger. You cannot fight a god with a sword until you've fought it with a sentence. 8 dynasties fell in that decade, royal houses that chose their weapons over their people and discovered which way the people voted. The weapons themselves went quiet, withdrew from their shrines, stopped taking envoys. Everyone thought they were retreating. They were doing something worse, transforming, accelerating toward that Father God threshold ahead of schedule, which was fine, which was, in fact, the plan. A cornered ranch owner shows up in person. The Reverse God Society declared open war, with Sun Bo and the restored axe as its banner, and called out the divine weapons of the world by name. Public challenge. 5 mountains. Come and be broken. They came, all 35 at once, on a burning afternoon over the 5 sacred mountains, the sky filled edge to edge with sacred silhouettes, spears and mirrors and bells the size of hills, wheeling like the vision from 8,000 years ago come back for a sequel. And the first thing they did, before the battle even opened, was feed. They turned on the tens of thousands of human soldiers who had marched under their own banners, their own worshippers, their loyalists, the faithful who'd come to fight for them, and drank them off the mountainside to fuel the coming transformation. That was the moment the world's last illusions died. Armies that had spent 10 years arguing about pamphlets watched the gods eat their own congregation mid-prayer. Despair is quiet, mostly. 50,000 people going silent at once is a sound you feel in your teeth. And Sun Bo, bleeding, half his banner guard gone, holding the axe in both hands, burned his own blood for volume, and screamed at the empty sky the 2 words the whole world had stopped believing in. Emperor Yan! And from somewhere above the clouds, mild as a man called twice for dinner, why are you rushing me? I walked down the sky. The last time a figure walked down the sky in one of my lives, I was arriving at a coronation. This time, I was arriving at a harvest, just not the one the weapons had planned. Because I hadn't spent those 10 propaganda years writing pamphlets. Pamphlets write themselves. I'd spent them under the 5 mountains, rebuilding the battlefield itself. Every ley line rerouted, every peak hollowed and reveined, the rivers repositioned by imperial decree. There were complaints from the Ministry of Works. There are always complaints from the Ministry of Works. Until 5 sacred mountains and everything between them had become one machine that only I could see the shape of. A furnace, 100 li across, with 35 gods standing on the ignition plate, mid-transformation, at their most committed and least mobile. I sprang it. Black and white closed over the sky like an eye shutting. Tai-yin below, Tai-yang above, the 5 mountains as the furnace walls, and every path out sealed by the one power in that world, that contained both of their natures at once. The weapons did what they always did, reached for their perfect escape, the merge into heaven and earth, and found that inside my furnace, I was heaven and earth. 10,000 years ago, an ancient god forged 100 weapons out of this world's laws. 10,000 years later, a young emperor cooked rivers, refined 5 sacred mountains, and suppressed the 36. That's not me being poetic. That's what the stone stele at the site says now, and I didn't write it, which makes it twice as good. Understand, I didn't kill them fast. I couldn't, and I wouldn't have anyway. For 20 years I sat on the rim of that furnace like a man minding a stove, and inside, 35 divine intelligences spent their accumulated eternity trying every exit their 10,000-year archives contained. Every escape attempt taught me another law of that world. Every technique they burned, my comprehension pocketed. I ascended a realm just sitting there, saw the road to 5th tier open up in the smoke, because the furnace wasn't just a prison. It was the greatest lecture hall in that world's history, and the faculty was dying inside it. Somewhere in year 12, the 35 kingdoms held a summit about their imprisoned gods and voted, actual assembly, actual ballots, to surrender to Great Lay preemptively. 35 emperors petitioning to capitulate to a man currently busy cooking their religions. The Minister of Rights handled the paperwork. He'd stopped weeping by then, mostly. When there was nothing left in them to learn, I erased what remained of their minds and shattered every weapon. All 35, plus the sun-moon spear from my storage, plus Reen, and this stung, I'll admit it, Reen, the splitting sky axe. Sun Bo handed it over himself, jaw set, the axe humming its distress into his hands. No complete weapon could remain, not one seed of the old crop. A rule is only a rule if it holds when it costs you. The fragments rained down over the 5 mountains for most of a day, and where they fell, the rule essence soaked back into the world it had been strip-mined from. The world got its laws back. And then I gave the herd its inheritance. A complete cultivation system, body and soul, my martial god and celestial realms, ceilings open all the way up, published to all 36 kingdoms at once, free forever. A scholar of that era wrote that it was like a room dark for 1,000 years being lit by a single lamp, and I keep that line in the same mental drawer as the crying monk, because it's the same feeling, and I am, as established, an addict. My son Jiejung took the throne, good kid, better paperwork discipline than his father, which left one loose end at the northern edge of the world, the rift, the ancient god's exit door, still hanging in the sky over the ice, breathing out the void. I'd flown up to it decades earlier and judged it certain death, raw spatial turbulence, the kind of environment where body becomes a past tense noun. But I'd never stopped thinking about it. The thing that made this world, the thing whose leftover lab equipment I'd just finished smelting, it went through there. Somewhere on the other side was the rest of that story. I walked the world for my last 20 years, watched the new system take root, watched the first free generation grow up not knowing what an envoy was. And on the last day, with 1 hour left on my stay, I went north, stood in front of the rift, and did the single most irresponsible thing of my many lives. I stepped in. The turbulence took my body apart faster than my nerves could file a complaint. Instant. Painless only in the sense that pain requires a survivor. My last coherent thought, as 160 years of empire dissolved into static, was, and I quote myself precisely, "Fortunately, I didn't try this 20 years ago." Because consciousness doesn't die in the turbulence. Consciousness got a fraction of a second's look at raw, unfiltered space, the naked machinery between worlds, before the gate yanked me home. And a fraction of a second, for me, is a semester. I woke up in the nutrient tank, 160 years in 50 hours. My realm, 4th tier, 9th stage, in a 19-year-old body that was now, thanks to a womb renovation in another universe, secretly built to luxury cosmic specification. I uploaded the 3rd stage of the Martial Dao path that week, the Martial God and Celestial chapters, seasoned with rule origin power that this galaxy's evaluation systems were frankly not braced for. 40,000 merit points. The Martial Dao evolution path climbed to number 1 on the Kanglan evolution ranking. Number 1. On the board that hadn't moved in 560 years. The Purple Thunder path, which had held the top slot for half a millennium, moved down 1 line, and its entire cultivator community went through the stages of grief in a public forum, which I read at breakfast twice. My favorite casualty of that update happened light years away, and I only learned of it later. Wen Hao, my rich, off-world tutoring student, got summoned by his father, the head of the Lulan family, a man whose casual remarks decide the fates of 1,000 planets. The verdict from on high. The Martial Dao path's odds of reaching 6th order are only 10%, son. Switch to something with pedigree. The boy actually argued, but father, I like martial arts, and the founder personally coaches me, and was being overruled in real time when the father pulled up the path's file to close the argument, saw the freshly uploaded 3rd stage, saw the projection line reading 60% to 6th order, and went quiet in the way tycoons go quiet when an asset reprices mid-meeting. Since you like it so much, he said, continue. Wen Hao told me his father had never once reversed himself before. I told him fathers mellow with age. Somewhere, an evaluation goddess and I shared a private smirk across the galaxy. And the 3 goddesses quietly tripled the information blockade on my identity, because somewhere in their planet-sized minds, a probability had updated. The anonymous author of the fastest rising evolution path in centuries was starting to look less like a curiosity and more like a national asset. Then President Fan called. The tournament break was over. Time for the finals. Oh, right, the finals. I'd almost forgotten, the way you forget a dentist appointment during a war. 2 weeks ago, by local time, I'd been a promising Tier 3 underdog, ranked 9th of 10, expected to lose politely in the quarterfinals. 2 weeks and 160 years later, the underdog came back from vacation. The finals format was a battle royale first. 10 finalists dropped onto a simulated island, 100 crystals hidden across it. Most crystals wins, combat legal. Whoever designed that rule set intended drama. The gun fired, 9 of the best young fighters on the planet scattered to hunt for treasure. I lay down on a warm boulder and closed my eyes. 10 billion viewers watched the 9th-ranked finalists take a nap on camera. The commentator generously called it strategic patience. The chat called it other things. Here's my logic, free of charge. Why search for crystals when 9 talented people were out there searching for me? 40 minutes in, Chang Zifeng, 6th Order awakened bloodline, insight eyes that see through terrain, 9 crystals in his pouch, second favorite for the title, was reaching for crystal number 10 when he became a red mist. He never saw me. Nobody saw me, including the cameras. His elimination replay is him smiling at a rock, and then the rock has crystals on it, and I'm picking them up. 10 billion people watched that clip in total silence, and then the arena made a sound I'd never heard a crowd make before. Somewhere between a gasp and a fire alarm. His viewer feed went dark, and 10 billion homeless spectators migrated to my camera like birds sensing weather. Fan Yue, 4th seed, gentle smile, terrifying hands, folded by an invisible pressure before I entered her line of sight, crystals collected in passing. 3rd seed, 5th seed. Understand, I wasn't hunting people. I was doing a grocery run where the groceries had seedings. Kale I kept. I found him mid-harvest, purple lightning crawling off him for 100 meters, and told him honestly that he was welcome to attack me. He felt the field come down, understood exactly what it meant, and to his eternal credit, refused to fold. I can lose, he said, but I can't be afraid. Then he converted his entire body into lightning and hit me with everything, 3 times, because 3 turned out to be that magnificent technique's hard limit before his physique gave out. Which was precisely the specification I'd been curious about. Incarnation of thunder, comprehended, catalogued, sincerely admired. He earned a spot in my permanent respect file, which is a short file. Gao Kai lasted longest, if longest describes being gently palmed around the island, while the phantom ancient god behind him threw punches I caught and crumbled like stale bread. The palm-sized elder on his shoulder went very, very still, the stillness of a ghost recalculating the local food chain. In the rest area afterward, Gao Kai looked around at the other 8 eliminated finalists and reportedly said, well, at least we're all here together. Final scoreboard of the point stage, and I promise this is the real number, me, 100 crystals. The 9 best young fighters on the planet, combined, 0. For the head-to-head bracket, 4 finalists forfeited the moment their path touched mine. Gao Kai surrendered before the referee finished the word begin at a speed that suggested rehearsal. First place, planet-wide. The champion's prize list ran 50 items deep, warships, gene serums, railguns. I picked 5 with the calm of a man doing meal prep. A life fruit that can rebuild a ruined body from a surviving soul, the soul-suppressing bell to guard the soul itself, Julie liquid, a 5 billion body-tempering bath, a soul-nourishing jade, and a 6th Order evolution manual from another star, purchased purely as a snack for my comprehension. The bath, incidentally, is famous for being agony. On its home planet, warriors screamed through the baptism as a rite of passage. I sat in it reading forum threads about myself. 200 years of pain tolerance is a spa upgrade. The commentators spent a week trying to explain what the audience had seen. The audience spent a week not caring because the cat fan club had tripled and was now producing merchandise. My mother framed a newspaper. Cousin Chen Lei, I'm told, unframed something. And the fallout came fast, from 3 directions. Direction 1, the neighbors upgraded me. A 4th-tier evolver under 100 years old on a mid-tier planet is a statistical event, the kind that hadn't happened on Sanglan in hundreds of thousands of years. The family moved into Manor 66 at the summit of the central continent, a 100-acre estate the government hands to planetary treasures, sitting inside the deepest ring of the planetary defense grid. My father walked the grounds on the first day whispering about property values. Chen Jie claimed the main building at dinner and was vetoed by my mother's slipper. Direction 2, the vultures noticed. Barely a month in the new manor, I passed a beautiful woman on a garden path, new neighbor, radiant smile, and my talent quietly handed me a receipt. Comprehension complete, unknown charm technique, origin non-human. She'd walked past me once, and my soul had shoplifted her secret racial seduction art out of the air between us, which is how I learned my new neighbor was a Flower God Clan infiltrator. Zerg Alliance. A professional honey trap dispatched to slow cook the promising young genius into a compromised asset. Her mission file, I imagine, said something like, "Target is young, isolated, susceptible." I reported her to the goddess of wisdom before lunch, the way you'd report a pothole. The goddess cross-checked 28 years of her cover identity in about 4 minutes, found the seam where the real woman had been replaced, and dispatched a 5th-tier soul illusion evolver, one of maybe 4 on the planet, to collect her from a coffee shop. The spy spent her last conscious moments frantically reviewing her own tradecraft for the mistake. There was no mistake. There was just me, allergic to mysteries, in a garden. I did feel one pang about the whole affair. Her charm technique really was excellent. And now it's mine, and I will never, ever have a socially acceptable occasion to use it. Direction 3, the big one. The Red Gang Star-Lord woke up. You have to understand what the Star-Lord is. The Qi Gang star region. 8 star systems, over 1 million living planets, and one being at the top of all of it. His true form, this is public record and still sounds like myth, is a star-sea roaming gang, a cosmic leviathan species that eats planets as cuisine, dozens of times the size of my homeworld. He'd been drifting in deep space, napping, for who knows how long. He woke up, remembered the tournaments had run, and skimmed the season's footage across 120,000 planets the way you check your phone in the morning. That year, out of more than 1 million competitors, the Star-Lord's eye stopped on 118 names. 3 got crimson marks, the certified future monster tier. 115 got gold marks, me among them. And for the first time in 300 years, he decided the crop was interesting enough to open the 7 Stars cave. I found out the way everyone found out. Yanked into a formal summons in the virtual world. No accept button, 5-second countdown. Over 1 million evolvers from 120,000 planets materialized on a white jade plaza the size of a small sea. Every arena's top 10 marked on the cheek in silver, gold, or crimson, all summoned to a trial world built personally by the ruler of the star region. Pass all 7 caves and you join the Qigong lineage, the Star-Lord's own organization. The top of the food chain with a door in it. Around me on that plaza, 1 million silver-marked planetary champions were realizing simultaneously that they were nobody here, and the social dynamics turned medieval in minutes. Gold marks got bowed to. The 3 crimson marks stood in cleared circles no one dared enter, like weather systems. I got fished for intel by a smiling gold-marked guy from the main star. Shall we exchange information about the trials? And I told him, with a perfectly straight face, that the 7th cave was hardest. He walked off satisfied. I had no idea what was in any of the caves, neither did he now. Gao Kai, bless him, came through where strangers didn't. His shoulder elder had intel on the cave from his dead master's archives, and Gao Kai walked me through all of it, free, out of pure hometown loyalty. The caves test everything: body, speed, reaction, soul, will, and Jun. The parts the Star-Lord actually cares about: comprehension. 12 peak lords of the Qi Gang lineage would be watching every second, shopping for disciples. Also, he said, we should hide our faces in there. If some maniac holds a grudge from the arena circuit, better he not recognize us. We adjusted our features. I made myself look colder and taller, because if you're going to be anonymous, you may as well be anonymous and handsome. 24 hours later, the trial opened, and 1 million people found out what the ruler of a star region considers an entrance exam. Cave 1. A black racetrack, 100 li long, gravity climbing the further you walk. By the 20 li mark, it passes 1,000 times normal, the kind of force that turns careless tier 3s into modern art. 1 million champions hit that track and the sorting began instantly. Swaggering, then sweating, then crawling, then quitting. I strolled it. Genuinely strolled, hands loose, sightseeing pace, 4,000 gravities in the final stretch, and my divine weapon world body treating it like humid weather. Somewhere around the 8 li mark, I passed a 4th tier named Isla, who was fighting for every step, and the man stopped mid-agony to bow to me, because watching someone window shop through a gravity field rearranges your priorities. Behind us, silver marks were washing out by the 100,000. Cave 2, a transparent tunnel, 40,000 meters, lasers sweep it every 10 seconds. Translation, be faster than 4 kilometers a second or be modern art again. Competitors burned forbidden techniques, blood boost arts. One gaunt guy ignited his own life force for speed. My comprehension pickpocketed his blood-burning technique on the way past, upgraded it, and filed it under Rainy Day. The 3 crimson marks showed off here. A silver-haired woman named Jing Ling crossed the tunnel in 5 unhurried steps, space-folding steps, no sonic boom, physics simply declining to comment, and I watched her do it with my heart actually racing, because space. My comprehension bit into the edges of that art like a dog into a postman's leg. A 3-meter mountain of a man called Brute Force simply ran fast enough to bully the air out of the way. A 3-eyed man rode the wind. My own crossing took under 7 seconds, and the sonic boom arrived at the finish line politely after I did. Cave 3. A simulated asteroid belt in 0 gravity, thousands of miles of tumbling rock. Touch 1 and you're out. For anyone with domain power, this is Minesweeper with the answers showing. My Taiji field mapped every rock's trajectory before it moved. I could have crossed it carrying soup. Cave 4 is where the 12 peak lords watching from their hidden space sat forward in their chairs. I know this because I've since heard the story from the chair's perspective. A hall of identical statues, each containing the same encoded secret art. Sit, contemplate, comprehend it. That's the test. Pure comprehension, the Star Lord's favorite metric. The 3 crimson marks had been grinding their statues for days, the projected average for gold marks, 2 weeks. I sat down, looked at my statue, and the statue looked back and unfolded like a flower, mountain heavy, foundation deep, a secret art of stillness. 23 minutes. The statue lit up, the hall lit up, and I got teleported onward while a hall full of geniuses stared at my empty seat. 12 peak lords, in their hidden observation space, went through a brief institutional crisis. The 10th peak lord, I later learned, had been idly considering claiming me as a disciple and dithering about it. After Cave 4, when he raised the topic, he was informed by his seniors, politely, the way sharks are polite, that the queue now started behind them. Cave 5, a mountain of 300 steps, and every step fires a soul attack. Take the hit, hold your mind together, climb. For most people, it's a wall. Soul defense is the rarest defense. For me, it was a vending machine that paid out in the only currency I can't print. See, soul attacks are precious. In the wild, a soul attacker exhausts themselves after 10 or 20 shots. But this staircase? Infinite, tireless, free soul attacks, forever, at escalating intensity. My comprehension turns damage into curriculum. So I did the thing that made no sense to a single observer. I stopped climbing. I stood on step 7 and let the mountain hit me in the soul, on repeat, like a man holding his face in a waterfall, while my defenses grew in real time. Jing Ling, the space genius, passed me around step 40. She looked back at the gold mark loitering on the lower steps, concluded there must be a profound hidden reason, and, I treasure this, stopped on step 40 to also stand there getting hit, copying my homework. After a few minutes of gaining nothing but a headache, she made a noise I won't transcribe and stormed on up. There was a profound hidden reason. The reason was free stuff. I camped that staircase for half a month. Slept in the real world, came back, stood on higher steps like a man upgrading his gym plan. Somewhere in there, my accumulated soul defense insights compiled themselves overnight into a complete secret art, the Mind Treasure Pagoda, a 5-colored tower of thought that wraps the soul in walls the staircase eventually couldn't scratch. I invented a soul defense masterpiece by getting hit in the head until the head won. When the mountain had nothing left to teach, I walked the remaining 200 steps like a man leaving a buffet, mildly disappointed it had run out. Cave 6. 10 steps, each one an illusion built from your own desires. Wealth. I materialized as the richest tycoon in the star region. Interest income of 120 trillion a year. Robot butlers reading me my dividends. Lovely. Fake. Next. Beauties. A palace of the kind of women who have fan clubs on multiple planets, all deeply interested in my well-being. I extracted my hand from the scrum with the words, "Important matters first," which the 12 watching peak lords apparently found more shocking than anything I'd done in Cave 4. Power, status, strength, glory, step, 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 step. The final step was love, family, warmth, belonging, the deep hooks. Here's the thing the illusions couldn't know. I've owned an empire and walked away from it. I've had wealth, thrones, and worship, in bulk, wholesale. Illusion me had nothing that actual me hadn't already returned to the store, and every second savored in there cost minutes out here. Total time for all 10 steps, about 4 minutes. The prior record, set by Jing Ling, raised from birth by a 6th-tier master, spoiled with everything, hard to tempt, was over an hour. The peak lords stopped discussing the crimson marks after that. I know because one of them told me, much later, over drinks. Cave 4, we argued about you. Cave 6, we stopped arguing. And then, Cave 7, the last one. The one the whole trial had been sharpening toward. A mountain peak floating in open starlight, real, not simulated. A summit adrift in the cosmos, and scattered across it 136 stone statues. Each statue encoded an entire evolution path. Not a technique, a path. A complete cultivation system, first stage to summit. 16 of the statues stood over 10 meters tall, paths that exceeded 6th order, the kind of inheritance that star systems go to war over. Comprehend any one statue deeply enough, touch it, pass. The tip carved at the entrance said, in effect, know your limits, pick a statue your size. 100+ surviving trialists spread across the summit and settled under statues like monks choosing gods. I looked at the field of statues, 136 complete evolution paths, free to read, guarded by nothing but time. And I heard the buffet bell of my entire existence ring so loudly, I'm surprised nobody else flinched. Know my limits. Sure. I started at statue 1, the soaring rock, a wind path, 6th order. Comprehended within the hour, essence extracted, fed to my Martial Dao. Next statue, the rat of deep earth. Next, the woman holding the flame of life. A green-haired girl was camped under that one, 10 days into her contemplation, and she kindly warned me it was a life attribute path, probably not my fit, don't waste my time. I sat down anyway, cracked it in an hour, thanked her sincerely, and moved on while she was still explaining why it would take me weeks. The watching peak lords, who could not see comprehension happening, only a man sitting briefly under statue after statue and leaving, arrived at the only sane explanation. The promising gold mark had choice paralysis. For days, their star pupil appeared to window shop the greatest inheritance vault in the star region, sitting under each treasure for an hour like a man testing mattresses. The third peak lord, Guzi, the one who wanted me most, reportedly aged visibly. Pick one, he told the viewing screen, which could not hear him. I was not picking one. I was taking all of them. The 16 giant statues, too. The 12-meter Rubik's Cube of space, Jingling's chosen statue, which took her, a natural-born space talent, 27 days of continuous effort to crack the first chapter of Lingling, gave me its eternal space path in half a day, and gave me something better than the path, a foothold on space itself. The black hole, the lidless eye, the great sun, the mirror into elsewhere, the giant devouring mouth, a path whose entire philosophy is eat everything, so psychically corrosive that no other trialist would sit under it. I ate the eating path. It went in my collection with a warning label, and I want it noted for later. That label paid for itself twice. 23 days, 136 statues. 136 complete evolution paths in my collection, including all 16 beyond 6th order ones. Then I sat down in an open spot to rest, and the Peak Lords watching concluded I had given up entirely. Poor Guzi wrote me off with genuine grief. No perseverance, his seniors consoled him. Shame about the talent. And while resting, I looked around one last time for anything I'd missed and noticed the thing every trialist for 10,000 years had failed to notice. The statues stood on something. The mountain, the floating peak itself. The single largest object in the cave, the literal ground under everyone's feet, bigger than all 136 statues combined. And now that my vision had been raised by 136 paths worth of altitude, the mountain had a hum to it, a depth, a structure. The mountain was the 137th statue. I lay down flat on my back, pressed my spine against the rock like a man sunbathing, and began to read the ground. To every observer, human and Peak Lord alike, the failed candidate had now physically laid down to nap on the sacred trial site. The commentary in the hidden space, I'm told, entered its acceptance phase. 10 days I lay there. This wasn't an hour per statue path. This thing was deep, deeper than the 16 giants by an order I didn't have units for. So deep that with my full talent bearing down on it, I clawed out 1% of the first chapter in those 10 days. 1%. And at 1%, the entire mountain began to shake. Every statue rattled on its base, the giant Rubik's Cube stopped rotating, the devouring mouth went silent. Across the summit, trialists grabbed the ground in panic, while the ground itself rang like a struck bell, and in a palace far away, the intelligent assistant of the Red Gang Star-Lord, who does not disturb his seclusion for wars, disturbed his seclusion. Because 10,000 years ago, the Star-Lord had hidden a 137th path in his trial, the profound yellow evolution path, a thing he'd carried out of a cosmic secret realm at the edge of death. A path so mysterious that in 10 millennia of trials, exactly one person had ever noticed it existed. That person became his 13th favorite memory and died young, and the Star-Lord stopped taking disciples for 10,000 years. The mountain had been waiting 100 centuries for someone to lie down on it. I got teleported out of Cave 7 mid-nap, not to the graduation plaza with the other finishers, to a private palace, crimson dark and planet quiet, where an old man in red robes sat on a throne with his eyes closed and the pressure of a being who naps between stars. He opened his eyes. 2 suns looked at me and dimmed themselves to be polite. "I am Red Gang," said the ruler of 1,000,000 planets. "I wish to take you as my 13th disciple. Are you willing?" I'd like to tell you I negotiated, played it cool, asked about benefits. "I am," I said at a speed that suggested rehearsal. "Here is what 13th disciple of the Red Gang Star-Lord unpacks into, because I read the benefits package the way some people read love letters." Title: 13th Peak Lord of the Chi Gang lineage. There are 13 mountain peaks on the Crimson Gang main star, 1 per disciple, and one of them was now legally mine, a mountain half the size of my home planet, staffed and waiting. Authority: second only to the Star-Lord himself, on par with 12 senior brothers, over a star region of 1,000,000 planets. Library access: every evolution path the lineage had collected in 200,000 years, over 1,000 of them, including a shelf of beyond 6th order paths that outside forces would burn fleets to photocopy. Supplies: Scarlet Spirit Liquid, the lineage's private resource, which converts directly into cultivation energy the way a fire hose converts into wet. No more energy accumulation, ever. Break through whenever the realm is ready. Bill the mountain. Security: a guard team headed by a 6th tier evolver named Fu Chen, 12 5th tiers under him, and 3 protection tokens forged personally by the Star-Lord: teleport, attack, and a defense token which, if triggered, summons the actual Red Gang across the actual galaxy at the actual speed of immediately. One condition: until I reached 6th tier, my identity stayed sealed. Because the last time the Star-Lord took a young disciple, 10,000 years ago, the one who found the mountain path before me, the boy's identity leaked, and the alien races paid 9 6th-tier lives to erase him before he could grow. The Star-Lord responded by descending onto the battlefield and spending a century expressing his grief in a medium the aliens understood. Then he stopped taking disciples for 10 millennia. So the lineage announced a 13th Peak Lord had been chosen. Cover story: a genius the Star-Lord found while wandering the universe, groomed in secret for years, and threw a celebration in the virtual world that half the star region attended. I sat on my new mountain in a disguised body, receiving toasts from planetary rulers, conglomerate heirs, and sect masters, all desperately curious who I was. "Congratulations to the 13th Peak Lord," a million voices said, to a face that wasn't mine. Beyond the border, 3 alien intelligence consciousnesses convened over the same announcement, and their meeting minutes, intercepted years later, are a comedy in 3 acts. Act 1. The Red Gang has taken a new disciple. His disciples have a 75% 6th-tier graduation rate. Kill it in the cradle. Act 2. Excellent plan. Which cradle? The trial pool was 1.2 million evolvers across 120,000 planets, and the lineage's cover story pointed at none of them. Act 3, and I quote the resolution. "We cannot assassinate 1.2 million people. Motion tabled. Watch for leaks." They adjourned, having decided to wait for me to expose myself, the way the last young disciple had. I resolved, warmly, to be the worst stakeout of their careers. And at a corner table down in the crowd, Gao Kai, who'd passed the trial fair and square as a silver mark and joined the lineage's regular ranks, raised a glass with his new colleagues and said, wistfully, that it was a shame his brother Chen had failed the 7 Stars Cave. If he'd passed, we could be drinking together right now. Gao Kai. Buddy. Look up. I didn't tell him. Couldn't. A 6th-tier soul reader can skim an unguarded mind like a headline, and every person who knows your secret is a door with a weaker lock than yours. So when he found me later and asked how my trial went, I said, "Didn't pass," and he spent a genuinely painful minute consoling me about the injustice of a system that would cut someone as talented as me. He offered to put in a good word with his new organization. He offered me a good word with my organization. "That would be great," I said, "and I want you to know that keeping a straight face through that sentence was the hardest trial of the 7. The teacher's first gift arrived by S-Class encrypted courier, the galaxy's premium shipping tier, 8 6th-tier escorts, and a 7th-tier delivery man, shipping cost alone in the hundreds of billions. Inside a 10-ton black gold case, a stone the size of my pinky nail. A rule crystal, a physical crystallization of the sun rule, essence of law you could hold, the kind of object that doesn't have a price because it doesn't have a market. The Star-Lord's note, paraphrased. Guiding a genius directly can bend his path, so here's a piece of the universe instead. Figure it out yourself. 80,000 years he'd kept that stone. He mailed it to a teenager on the strength of one nap on a mountain. I also found the Founders Forum around then, a hidden layer of the virtual world open only to certified creators of high-potential evolution paths. Population, a few dozen entities across all human space, posting questions with centuries between replies. I found a 23,000-year-old thread asking whether it's better to comprehend one rule deeply or many broadly. Scrolled through 20 millennia of respectable answers and left mine. Comprehend one Dao and use it to govern 10,000 Daos. Then I logged off, because I had a universe to be in. The reply sat there, like a coin dropped down a very deep well. Remember the well, it echoes later. Then the gate lit up for trip 4, and the preview finally had the decency to warn me. 200 years of stay. And through the door, no golden palace, no temple courtyard, just a landmass war-torn and vast, and a taste in the air like rust and funerals. The preview said, war and disaster. The preview undersold it. I arrived in the dark, not night dark, underground dark, the dark of a place light has never been invited. And before I could take stock, the pain arrived, and I need you to understand this pain was not an event, it was the furniture. 6 chains of Millennium Deep Sea gold ran through the body I was wearing. 2 through the collarbones, 4 pinning the limbs. Each engraved with suppression runes by a master's hand, each humming with the specific frequency of forever. The body itself, sealed at the meridians, sealed at the soul, starved to a rasp, sitting in the lowest cell of an 18-level abyssal prison where the world's own pressure crushed cultivators into pedestrians. My inherited memories arrived and introduced me to my new self. Long Zifeng, the demon sovereign, the greatest devil head of the 5 regions, the man who had united every demonic cultivator in the world under one crown of fear. betrayed at his peak 5 years ago by the woman he loved, Han Rule, who had spent decades building his trust, saved his life on cue, nursed him through a staged crisis, worn the bloodline of his dead first love's family like a costume, all of it scripted by the heavenly swordmaster, the righteous leader who couldn't beat Long Zifeng honestly, and so unmade his heart instead. When the great betrayal broke his will mid-battle, they chained him, sealed him, and buried him alive on level 18 of the Great Abyss to die slowly of despair, which he was doing, right on schedule. The original Long Zifeng was hours from giving up his last breath when my consciousness slid into the vacancy. So let's take inventory of Trip 4's starting position. Body, dying. Power, sealed. Location, the bottom of the world's maximum security prison, in the body of the world's most hated man, betrayed by everyone he ever elevated, with jailers upstairs checking a magic lantern once a month to see if he's dead yet. I lay there in the dark, took the full measure of the situation, and felt something I hadn't felt in 4 worlds: professional interest. Because here's what my inventory also said. That devouring path, the giant mouth statue nobody else would sit under, the one I ate with a warning label, its core technique converts foreign material into self, and I was currently wearing 6 chains of the finest material in the world. They'd bound me in metal. I'd recently mastered eating. I couldn't move. Moving triggered the seals. Couldn't cultivate. Cultivating triggered the seals. But the base circulation of blood and breath, the minimum metabolism of staying alive, the wardens had generously left that running, because their whole plan was for me to keep living miserably. So I threaded the devouring art through my ordinary breath, thinner than suspicion, and began, molecule by molecule, breath by breath, to digest my own chains. 10 years. 10 years in the black, motionless, eating restraints. I want to be honest about those years. No montage survives them. There was the dark, and the pain, and the arithmetic of grams per day, and a mind that had better hold, or the whole plan dies with the body. Upstairs, meanwhile, my only entertainment was eavesdropping on the guard rotation, and I came to know those men like a radio drama. The veteran, Ma Si, giving every fresh recruit the same orientation tour. That's the life lantern the heavenly swordmaster left. Flame burning means the monster below still breathes. No, we don't go down. No, you don't go down either. The recruits asking the question recruits always asked, if the demon sovereign's locked up, Uncle Ma, why are the devil heads back home massacring villages again? And Ma Si going quiet, because the honest answer was treason-shaped. Things had been safer with the monster on the throne. One shift, I heard him actually mutter it, half to himself, into the wind off the pit. Maybe sealing him was the mistake. My jailer, radicalizing himself on my behalf, one boring decade at a time. I'd have applauded if moving my hands hadn't triggered the seals. And every month, the lantern check. Still alive, they marveled. Tough old monster. The flame they were watching never told them the prisoner was slowly absorbing the building. Year 10, the last link went down my metaphorical throat, and 6 chains of legendary deep-sea gold had become, this is the part I enjoy, body reinforcement. A decade of the world's best metal, metabolized. The seals collapsed with nothing left to anchor to. 10 more years to rebuild the body from famine rasp to full function, breathing in the trickle of thin, abyssal chi. 20 years total in a basement. And then, on a quiet morning, on level 18 of the inescapable Great Abyss, I stood up, cracked my neck, and walked upstairs. 18 gates, each one built by the assembled righteous masters of an era to hold the demon sovereign forever. I did not pick the locks. The guards on the surface were mid-shift change when the final gate, black gold, 10,000 runes, detonated outward in a spray of shrapnel. And out of the smoke of the world's deepest hole walked a figure in 5-year-old rags who paused, raised a hand against the daylight like a man leaving a matinee, and took the deepest breath in 25 years. The chi of 100 li bent toward that breath. Guards fell over. One of them, I'm told, retired that afternoon, mid-shift, verbally. And the first piece of luck of the whole trip arrived on cue, an 8th realm enforcer named Zhang Jiangke, the prison's off-site supervisor, came streaking in to investigate the commotion, took one look at the open door and the man standing in it, understood the situation with admirable speed, and fled at maximum output in the opposite direction. I raised one hand, the sky's worth of chi condensed into a palm 10 li across, picked the fleeing dot out of the air the way you take a grape off a table, and closed. 25 years of imprisonment, The wardens should be grateful. The first meal I ate on the surface was the manager. There was exactly one person waiting for me outside that prison, and her name matters. Hu Long, one of the original body's 36 protectors, a girl Long Zifeng had picked up off a battlefield as a child and raised into an officer. For 25 years, while 9 demon lords divided the fallen sovereign's empire and toasted his burial, while every devil head in the world made peace with the new order, this one woman had kept trying to break into the great abyss. She'd burned through her forces, her strongholds, her reputation. She'd been reduced from commander of thousands to a handful of loyalists in a border shack. That very week she'd been outside the prison, failing again, with acid that didn't work on the gates. She saw the figure in rags at the prison mouth, and this hardened demon officer hit her knees in the snow and couldn't speak. Loyalty is the rarest ore in any world. You mine it where you find it. I told her to get up, and we went to her last safe house, and I want it noted that of everything the original Gold Zifeng built, an empire, a religion of fear, 9 demon lords, the only thing still standing after 25 years was one stubborn woman with a bad acid budget. Word got out fast. It always does. The demon sovereign walks again, and the world sorted itself into 3 reactions. The old guard, who remembered him, quietly began updating their wills. The righteous sects looked nervously at the Heaven Sword sect. And the new generation of devil heads, kids who'd risen in the lawless 25 years since his fall, who knew him only as a bedtime story, smelled opportunity. Kill the fallen legend while he's weak, inherit the legend. 3 of the hottest young monsters of the demonic path, Zhou Xin, the little demon lord, Tang Lei, the assassin who'd once wounded a 9th realm expert, and a sweet-faced girl with a jade talisman connected to her hidden 9th realm master, pooled hundreds of elite devil heads and surrounded my shack for a career-defining ambush. They got their formations set. They got their speeches ready. The door opened, I stepped out, and every single demonic cultivator within a dozen li, Zhou Xin, Tang Lei, Jade Girl, all several hundred of the ambush, hit the ground face first, simultaneously, and began kowtowing. Involuntarily, rhythmically. Because here's the thing about the body I was wearing, the secret under the demon sovereign's whole career. Long Zifeng doesn't outrank demonic cultivators. He suppresses them at the level of life essence. Every technique of the demonic path, in every body that cultivates it, recognizes him the way iron recognizes a magnet. It's not respect, it's physics. The girl crushed her jade talisman, the emergency beacon, summon my master, save me. 100 li away, her 9th realm master felt the beacon, considered what could possibly make her daughter figure trigger it in this particular decade, drew the correct conclusion, and fled the province at full burn. The beacon dust trickled through the girl's fingers while she watched the horizon not produce a master. I asked the assembled ambush one question. Do you want to die or live? The vote was unanimous and loud. So I planted a life-death talisman between every set of eyebrows present, the old sovereign's classic management tool, a seed of my aura that detonates on command, and just like that, I had my first several hundred employees. Ambush to onboarding, 40 minutes. The old Long Zifeng would have killed a few dozen for the aesthetics. I'm from a civilization with HR departments. Waste is a sin. The 9 demon lords took 2 more weeks. They'd holed up in Demon Lord Qian Gong's underground palace, a fortress he'd spent 20 years building over a heavenly-grade chi spring, warded with 9 heaven-grade demonic arrays, each array run by one 9th realm demon lord. Their council agenda, I learned later, was literally, what do we do if he comes here? The motion on the table was 9 lords, 9 arrays, home advantage. Even the old sovereign at his peak couldn't crack this vault. All in favor? I walked in mid-vote. The arrays triggered. 9 heaven-grade killing formations, 20 years of paranoid engineering, woven from concentrated demonic chi. And demonic chi, when I stepped onto the formation floor, remembered whose family it was. The killing arrays boiled once, turned in the air like dogs hearing the real owner's whistle, and gathered at my feet. All 9 demon lords, the men who'd carved up my predecessor's empire and never once visited his grave, experienced simultaneous, involuntary, load-bearing kowtows. Qian Gong, 9th realm peak, the almost successor, spent the meeting with his forehead reacquainting itself with his own floor tiles. I walked past them, up the dais, sat on Qian Gong's throne, and let the silence do the paperwork. Respectfully welcoming the sovereign, Qian Gong told the tiles, back from the great abyss. Empire recovered. Time elapsed since leaving prison, about a month. Then I asked for 25 years of intelligence reports and got the 2 data points that would shape the century. 1. The Heaven Sword sect had gone strange. 5 times in 2 decades, heaven and earth chi had flooded toward their mountain in tidal quantities, the signature of someone forcing the gate of the legendary 10th realm. The heavenly swordmaster, riding the fortune of defeating the demon sovereign, was about to become this world's first 10th realm expert in 10,000 years. Original Long Zifeng would have sprinted there for revenge and died in the trap they were so obviously building around exactly that impulse. 2. My own predecessor's protector, Gong Chen, Hulong's counterpart, planted inside the Heaven Sword sect decades ago as a mole, was still in there, still transmitting, still loyal to a man who'd been buried alive for a quarter century. Revenge could wait. Revenge always keeps. I took over the underground palace, parked myself on the Chi Spring, and broke through to 5th tier, main world 5th tier, the continental sinking class, in a world whose official ceiling was the 9th realm and whose theoretical legend was the 10th. The 9 demon lords guarding my seclusion felt the Chi Spring drain like a bathtub, and privately concluded I was assaulting the 10th realm. When I emerged and they asked, trembling, if I was now 10th realm, I said no, truthfully, and let them believe the humble version. The truth, that their new old boss had left the numbered realms entirely and was now on a different scale, the way a mountain isn't a large stone, would only have kept them up at night. Middle management needs its sleep. One visitor came during those years that I want on the record. The Grand Elder of the Zhege sect, a righteous sect, second only to Heaven Sword, arrived alone at a demon fortress, having voluntarily sealed his own meridians to prove he came unarmed. Min, 8th realm elder of the Orthodoxy, walking into the Devil's throne room on purpose. He came to warn me. The Heaven Sword sect is a dragon's den now, he said. Whatever you're planning, don't walk into it. And then he said the sentence I keep in the collection. You are cold-blooded, merciless, tyrannical, and your hands are soaked in blood, but you are a good person. His reasoning: in the decades the demon sovereign ruled the demonic path, the devils of the world had rules, quotas, restraints. Villages didn't burn for practice. The moment the righteous sects won and took him off the board, the demonic path went feral, and the world drowned in exactly the chaos the war had been fought to prevent. He'd watched 500 years of history and concluded that the scariest man alive had been the only functioning government the dark half of the world ever had. Since when do good people do so many bad things? I said. He didn't have an answer. I had him escorted to comfortable quarters anyway. You don't waste an honest man. They're rarer than chi springs. And I took his warning seriously because it confirmed the timeline. The trap at Heavensword Mountain was live, armed, and waiting for a hot-headed demon king. They built the perfect trap for the man I used to be. Nobody had built one for me. The trap sprang itself, in the end, on the one man I owed. Gong Chen, the mole, the loyalist, 25 years undercover in the Heaven Sword sect for a boss everyone else had written off as a corpse, worked out from inside what the sect was hiding. The master had already crossed into the 10th realm. The blackout was bait, and the moment the demon sovereign came for revenge, he'd be walking into a god's mouth. Gong Chen decided the warning was worth more than his cover, or his life. He ran for the border of the sect. The heavenly sword master, whose perception now blanketed the whole mountain like weather, flicked one sword intent across 100 li and put it through his chest. And Gong Chen, chest hold, cover blown, dying, lit the forbidden art. The disintegration god-burning technique. Total combustion of body, spirit, and everything, converted into speed. It cannot be stopped once lit. It cannot be survived. Devil heads don't use it, because what's the point of an escape you don't survive? It has exactly one use case, when the message matters more than the messenger. He crossed half the world as a dying comet, burning himself as fuel, getting faster as there was less of him left. The heavenly sword master watched him go and didn't bother pursuing. Why chase a man who was already his own pyre? I caught him outside the palace. What was left? A sliver of primordial spirit wrapped in flame, seconds from nothing, and he used those seconds to deliver his report. 12 words. Before death, to see the sovereign, no remaining regrets. And 8 more, respectfully welcoming the demon sovereign back to the 5 regions. Then he burned out in my hands. Here's what the world's cultivators know about the disintegration technique. It consumes everything. Nothing survives. Full stop. 6,000 years of precedent. Here's what I knew. holding the ash of a man who'd spent his life on a warning I didn't even need. Nothing is nothing. At the bottom of that burnout, smaller than a thought, there's a final mote, the true spirit, the last address of a person. And a hand, fast enough, precise enough, and stubborn enough, can catch it. My hand was all three. I caught the mote. I carried it down to the chi spring where a 5-colored lotus grew, a spirit plant of the kind that shows up once in an era, gentle-natured, soul-nourishing. I planted what was left of Gongchen inside the lotus, and for years I fed that flower like a man keeping a vigil. And one morning, the lotus withered, and out of the ground beneath it climbed a figure of woven lotus root and knelt clumsily and said, in a voice made of stems finding itself, "Gongchen greets the sovereign." I cut my hand and gave him a drop of blood, and the blood rewrote the root into flesh, skin, bone, breath, a boy's face where a dead man's loyalty used to be. He looked at his new hands for a long time. The man burned himself to zero, delivering a warning. I made the zero bloom. We were even, by my ledger, anyway. His ledger, he made clear, did not run that way, and never would. The revenge, when it finally came, was not a duel. I don't do duels with people who cheat at hearts. I waited years, comfortably, while the heavenly swordmaster sat in his trap getting older and the trapped experts of the 5 regions grew mutinous about their endless, strategic houseguest arrangement. I let the trap rot from boredom. Eventually, they gave up, went home, resumed their lives. The master turned 800, and the sect threw the birthday of the century. Every expert of the 5 regions in attendance, clouds combed, immortal cranes rented. On the summit, the newly minted 10th realm sovereign of the righteous world received congratulations and privately mused, the records of that day survive, that Long Zifeng was a stray dog not worth remembering. And Han Ruo sat below his dais in her white dress, the woman who'd spent decades manufacturing a love and then detonating it, daydreaming, she'd told her handmaidens, that if her big brother Long ever did come back, she begged the master to keep the corpse intact so she could keep it. Keep it. The corpse. As decor. I sent my Tai Yin primordial spirit to the party. By then, my 5th-tier soul had learned the trick that would define the rest of my career. Splitting. A Jing spirit and a Chung spirit. 2 full-power projections of me, moon-natured and sun-natured, each one a freestanding catastrophe, both sharing one consciousness with the body on the throne a continent away. The Jing spirit rose over Heaven Sword Mountain mid-toast, unfurled to its full working height of 100,000 zhang. For scale, the sacred mountain the sect is named for reached its ankle, blotted out the birthday sun, and stepped once. The heavenly swordmaster had a full second to respond, which for a 10th realm expert is an eternity. He rose, blazed, gripped the descending sky with everything 10 millennia of his sect had saved up, and learned the difference between the top of a ladder and the bottom of a boot. The mountain that had judged the world for 100 centuries went flat. Where the Heaven Sword sect had been, there is now a valley in the shape of a footprint, tens of li deep, and the local rivers have spent the years since politely rerouting around the toes. The primordial spirits of the fallen rose from the wreck and fled in every direction, hundreds of expert souls, the whole birthday guest list. The Jing spirit leaned down over the crater and inhaled once, and the sky bent, and every fleeing light curved back like water finding a drain. I kept 2 out of the swallow, the master and Han Ruo, pinched out of the stream, held up to eye level, thumb-sized, and screaming. The man who unmade my predecessor's heart with a rented love story, and the love story herself. I'd planned, vaguely, for years, to have words, a reckoning, something ceremonial. Looking at them wriggling there, I discovered the truth of the matter. There was nothing in either of them worth a sentence. The Chung spirit surfaced beside the Jing, opened, and I fed them both to the sun on the way past. Ceremony concluded. The world drew the obvious conclusion. The demon sovereign's true cultivation had returned beyond all reckoning, and the 5 regions reorganized around that fact with impressive speed. 10 years, and the demonic path had unified the entire world under an empire we named Xia, after the old man's surname. The conquest consisted mostly of provinces reading the news and pre-surrendering. And then I did the thing that made the historians of that world spend 3 centuries arguing about my classification. I published. The Martial Dao system, rebuilt for local physics, released to all 5 regions, free, taught in public halls by imperial decree. The Demon Empire's flagship policy, universal access to cultivation, no bloodline requirements, no sect gates, no tithes. Farm kids, fishmongers' daughters, elderly aunties. Min old Ninth Realm hermit famously spent a decade waiting for the catch. Where's the soul tax? Where's the fine print? And finally gave up and enrolled his granddaughter. The tyrant handed out staircases. That was the whole tyranny. Meanwhile, the world itself had begun to fight back. And here the trip got interesting in the way I actually care about. All that ambient chaos of my arrival. A sealed legend unsealing. A 10th realm dying. A demon empire distributing superpowers had spooked something old. The world's grand fortune erupted. Heaven and earth luck, the world's own immune system, began mass-producing protagonists. And I watched 3 origin stories bloom across my intelligence reports like someone had opened a novel factory. Story 1. A beggar girl in a market town scrapes together 2 copper coins, her entire fortune, for a water-stained booklet off a book peddler's junk shelf. The peddler mocks her on principle and sells it, because 2 coins are 2 coins. The booklet is a spirit-refining art that shouldn't exist below the great sects. She's first realm within a day. That was Chengyu. Story 2. A young master of a fallen house, hunted off a cliff by his family's murderers, swears mid-fall to come back as a ghost, and lands in a tree growing out of the cliff face, next to the only cave entrance in 100 li of sheer rock, containing the 50,000-year-old legacy of a suspected 11th realm expert. The statistical odds of that landing are not odds, they're authorship. That was Hu Hao. Story 3. A clan boy publicly branded trash by his own grandfather. 3 years, and you can't even form a chi vortex. Walks away from the humiliation with his head down, and the black ring on his finger, quietly, starts to glow. You know this story. Every world knows this story. That was Lan Jing. 3 of them in 1 generation. Children of luck, fortunes chosen. Each one a walking movie. Each one growing at speeds that would be impressive if I didn't have my own montage to compare against. They rocketed to 9th realm peak in 20 years. The world was speed-breeding heroes. And I read those intelligence reports over breakfast in my underground palace with the strangest feeling of professional recognition. Cheap manual, lucky fall, glowing ring. I know this catalog. I shop at this catalog. The difference is that their sponsor was a desperate planet, and mine is a door the planet should be significantly more worried about. To subdue whom, you ask? The great calamity destabilizing the era? Me. I checked the math twice. The world had looked at the man handing out free cultivation manuals and classified him as the apex threat. Which, fine, fair, I had eaten its previous ceiling like a canapé. The 3 children of luck came for me exactly once, fresh out of a 100-year power-up in a hidden underground world, buffed to the eyebrows, joint attack technique polished, destiny singing in their ears. They got within 100 li, met my eyes across the distance, and their destiny, I watched this happen, filed for a leave of absence. All 3 knelt in the woods, unprompted, and then went home and took up gardening in a remote mountain village. Fortune's chosen and Fortune's honest opinion of the matchup was, hide, which left me and the management, because the children of luck weren't the point. They were the world's last attempt before the direct approach, and when I put visible killing intent on all 3 at once, the direct approach arrived. Lan Jing stood up in that forest with his eyes gone pure gold, no pupil, no person, and the voice that came out of him was the world itself. The world consciousness, the planetary operating system wearing its favorite child as a glove. State your demand, it said, finally, management. I want the Martial Dao to have a permanent legacy in this world, I said, flourishing. 10,000 years, minimum, never suppressed, never quietly strangled by a convenient chosen one after I'm gone. Impossible, said the world. We negotiated. That's the polite word for a conversation where one party can generate infinite heroes and the other party has eaten the last 3 things that inconvenienced him. And partway through the haggling, the world played its actual hand. It had a problem it couldn't solve. In the far north, past the endless sea, a hole had been eating the world for 100,000 years. The North Sea Eye, a black rupture 800,000 li across, swallowing heaven and earth chi day and night. It was the reason this world's ceiling kept dropping, the reason 10th realm experts had gone from rare to mythical, the reason every summit cultivator for 1,000 centuries had heard a mysterious calling and marched north, never to return. The world had been quietly bleeding out the whole time, hiring every hero it could make and losing. So we made the deal. The world would let the Martial Dao live, no suppression, no scheduled heroes, honest weather. And I would go and look at its wound. I flew north across the endless sea, and on the far shore, on an island nation of exiled protectors, generation after generation of the summit experts the world had been recruiting for millennia, dozens of 10th realms, 6 11th realm island lords who'd never once been mentioned in 5 regions' history, the entire garrison was lined up on the beach waiting for me. The world consciousness had phoned ahead. Obey him, it had told them. Their patriarch, Duan Island Lord, bowed to a stranger from the barren south on faith because his god told him to. And I looked at the North Sea Eye, 800,000 li of hungry nothing that 100,000 years of heroes had only slowed, and I did what I do to bottomless mouths. I sat down on it. Understand the physics of that hole. For 100 millennia, the entire world's chi had been flowing north into the eye like rivers into a drain. Every gram it swallowed, gone forever. The garrison's suppression arts could slow the drain by a fraction at the cost of 9 10th realm experts on permanent shift duty. I read their sealing art in a few days, rewrote it twice. The second version needed a 15th realm practitioner, which was convenient since the local supply of those was me, and then dismissed the guards, walked out over the rupture, and dropped the seal on the whole thing at once. The eye pushed. I pushed back. The eye, for the first time in 100,000 years, got smaller. And here's where I confess the scam, because it was beautiful. Sealed under my pressure, the eye couldn't swallow anything, but the world's chi didn't know that. The rivers of energy kept flowing north out of habit, arriving at a drain that no longer drained. All of it, a world's worth of chi income, the accumulated tribute that used to vanish into the hole, pooled around the one person sitting on the lid. I sat on that rupture for 120 years, dieting on the entire planet's chi output, and rose through the 12th realm, the 14th, past every number the world had names for. The garrison watched their apocalypse shrink year by year and held festivals. Duan Island Lord stopped just short of building me a shrine. I'd like to say I hurried. I did not hurry. Somewhere around year 40, the eye was functionally neutralized, and I just kept sitting, the way you keep sitting in a hot bath, because the chi was lovely and the 7th tier wasn't going to fund itself. The world consciousness knew perfectly well what I was doing with its bandwidth. I could feel it watching, a vast, passive-aggressive silence in the sky, and said nothing, because the alternative contractor pool was empty. When I finally squeezed the eye down to the width of a hair, something on the far side lost its temper. A consciousness came through the pinhole, old, vast, furious, pressing mental fluctuations through the gap like a voice through a keyhole. Stop. Then, quickly, everything is negotiable. Then, name your price. The thing behind the North Sea Eye, the mouth owner, the entity that had spent 100,000 years drinking a world through a straw, and it wanted to make a deal now that I had my fingers on the straw. I've made deals with a world consciousness. That's a mechanism. It keeps terms. But a hungry somebody beyond a hole in the sky, at least 7th order plus, with 100 millennium head start on grudges? There is no version of that negotiation where the small party walks away clean. So I declined the meeting by continuing to squeeze. It cursed, it thrashed, it threw one soul attack through the closing gap, weakened by the crossing to a fraction of a fraction. And that fraction still rang my mind treasure pagoda like a cathedral bell, which told me everything about the original size. Then the hair's width became nothing. The nothing became a black dot smaller than a mote, and the voice cut off mid-threat. I picked the dot out of the air, the world-eating abyss, the 100,000-year apocalypse, the reason 1,000 generations of heroes had marched north to die. I swallowed it. Waste not. There's a coda to Trip 4, and it's the part I'm actually proudest of, so bear with me. Before the gate opened, I settled accounts. 10 wooden tokens for Who Long, each loaded with a 13th realm strike, break in case of apocalypse, 10 apocalypses covered. The Xia Empire's succession sorted, its trump cards buried where trump cards should be. Gong Chen, lotus-bodied, 10,000-year lifespan, absolutely loyal, appointed guardian of the Dao. Watch the Martial Dao from the shadows, forever. Intervene only if the inheritance itself is threatened. The garrison of the north released from their 100 millennium posting, with a 5-century timer before they could migrate south, so the 5 regions would have time to grow experts of its own, and the returning titans wouldn't accidentally become the new ruling class. Details. Empires die of skipped details. And then the guarantee. Because a deal with a world consciousness is a mechanism, yes, but mechanisms get audited by whoever survives you, and I wouldn't be there to enforce the terms. So I walked into the western desert, sat down on the sand, and let my body, the 18th realm body, the strongest object in that world's history, with the swallowed North Sea eye sealed inside it like a pit in a peach, sink down through the dunes, deeper and deeper, to the continental bedrock. And I keyed it to one condition. The day this world no longer carries the blood-chi hum of Martial Dao practitioners, the day the inheritance dies, the body detonates. Min 18th realm corpse going off would crack the continent, and the blast would tear the seal off the black dot, and the North Sea eye would open again, brand new, in the world's basement. Then I said all of this out loud, alone, to an empty desert, because I could feel the golden-eyed attention watching me from the sand and the wind, the way it had watched me since the north. Keep the promise, I told the weather, or everyone goes down together. The weather kept very still. Some people leave monuments. I leave compliance mechanisms. The gate took me home, and I opened my eyes in the nutrient tank with 300 years of empire, prison, and planetary dentistry behind me, 20 days of main world time, and a body that had jumped from 4th tier, 12th stage, to 5th tier, 12th stage. Min entire major realm cleared in one trip. My noodle body era was over. I was 1 tier below Starfalling class, and 1 good idea away from it. I uploaded the 5th order chapter of the Martial Dao that week, the primordial spirit arts, the Jing and Cheng split, techniques functionally equivalent to the clone talents that rare cosmic species guard like crown jewels. The Goddess of Wisdom's evaluation, 200,000 merit points, and the Martial Dao evolution path rose to 53rd on the star region chart. Let me contextualize, because the number hides the scandal. The Qigong chart ranks the top 100 evolution paths across 1 million planets. Everything in the top 50 anything is a 6th or 7th order path, most of them older than recorded history. And sitting at 53 among the ancient 6th order titans, a 5th order path, 3 years old, author unknown. A forum commenter compared it to a toddler with a pacifier wandering into a university faculty meeting, and the toddler kept getting promoted. 2 consequences followed, one flattering, one educational. The flattering one, my teacher panicked. The Red Gang Star Lord, who had spent months in seclusion carefully composing a bespoke training plan for his new disciple, a step-by-step syllabus through 4th and 5th tier, came out of seclusion, checked my file, found I'd already finished the syllabus, and quietly deleted the document. I have this from his own assistant. He then sat with the problem of how to teach me, concluded that instructing a genius directly risks bending his path, and settled on the pedagogical method he'd stick with from then on. Hand the boy priceless artifacts and stand well back. The educational consequence. Linglong Scholar found me. Remember the coin I dropped down the 23,000-year-old forum well? 1 Dao to govern 10,000 Daos. It echoed. The well wrote back. The original poster turned out to be alive, an 8th-level citizen, an evolutionary grand scholar, one of the rarest classifications in human civilization, the people whose personal research decides wars, and he came back to his ancient thread like a man hearing a knock in an abandoned house. He tried to look up my identity. The Goddess of Wisdom stonewalled him. An 8th-level citizen told insufficient authority, which he later described as the most interesting insult of his century. So he did it the honest way, left a question under my reply. We started talking. Him, probing, testing, dropping hints about realms I hadn't reached. Me, answering from a couch on a mid-tier planet, occasionally saying something that made him go quiet for an hour of what I now know was frantic modeling. It was the best conversation I'd had in 5 worlds, and I made a note that would matter enormously later. Somewhere out there, a grand scholar was slowly convincing himself that the anonymous Martial Path founder was a colleague. And then there was the lecture. Kanglin's top academy had made me an honorary professor, champion's obligations, and at a faculty mixer, the conversation turned to the mysterious Martial Dao path everyone was studying. Professor He, a decent man with tenure and confidence, walked me through my own evolution path, corrected my one-sided understanding of its foundations, and explained what its unknown creator had probably intended. I sat there, nodding, being taught the intentions of the creator by a man standing in front of the creator, wrongly, with slides. I gave him a good performance review. It was the least I could do. He'd taught me something genuinely valuable, after all, that anonymity is the best seat in the theater, even if everything he'd said about the syllabus was backwards. Then Min-Hee came into my life, and I want to introduce him properly because he worked very hard to matter. The Black Prison Family, one of the 5 great powers of the Qi-Gang star region, a commercial empire spanning all 8 star systems, anchored by the 7th-tier patriarch Min-Gang. And Min-Hee was the patriarch's youngest son, number 3,800-something, in a family where daddy's attention is a competitive sport. His path back to the clan throne ran through money, and his money plan ran through the arena circuit. The family think tank had computed him a list of 223 undervalued young evolvers to sign, train, and race like horses at the next star domain tournament. I was on the list. Somewhere in the middle, apparently. 4th tier, mid to late, projectable to 5th, expected top 1,000 finish. His butler invited me first. I declined politely. I have this prior engagement, being secretly one of the 13 rulers of the star region. Then Min-Hee invited me personally, which in his cosmology was like the sun agreeing to visit your birthday party. He came in warm, dropped his prepared speech, sign for 80 years, resources beyond your dreams, my protection. And the whole time, his eyes said what his mouth was too disciplined to. Kneel faster, please. I have other appointments. I'm not interested in the tournament, I said. You needn't waste effort. I watched the warmth drain out of him like someone had pulled a plug. Average aptitude, he pronounced on his way out. Too much arrogance. Average aptitude. I've been called many things across 6 worlds. That one I had framed, metaphorically. Sometimes literally. I know a guy in the virtual world who does plaques. What Min-Hee did next was, I'll admit, competent villainy, legal, deniable, and aimed at the soft target. He couldn't touch me physically. Alliance law and the 3 goddesses make assassination a suicide note. So he cut off all black prison trade with Kanglan Star, every contract, every shipping lane, penalty fees cheerfully paid, and made sure everyone knew the reason. That ungrateful Chen Zifeng boy refused young Master He. One planet's economy held hostage to make one man kneel. And the planet folded exactly as designed. Overnight, I went from tournament hero to planetary sinner. Corporations issued statements of concern. Forums that had crowned me the cat now debated whether I owed 50 billion people an apology and a pilgrimage, on my knees, carrying a birch rod, which is a traditional posture I was invited to study. My mother stopped reading the news. Chen Jie got into 2 fights at school defending me and lost her allowance over the second one, which she maintains was worth it. So here's where I confess what I did about it, which is almost nothing, on purpose. I could have ended it in an hour. One call to my senior brothers and the Black Prison Family would have arrived on Changlan by the shipload to apologize in formation. But every open move from the Qi-Gang lineage on my behalf would light me up for the divination path evolvers who mapped a galaxy by anomaly, and somewhere beyond the border, entire alien war councils were still running probability models titled, Who is the 13th Peak Lord? A rescue would answer their question. Rescues are signatures. So I asked my first senior brother, the strongest disciple, 7th tier peak, to simply make sure nothing irreversible happened, quietly. And this magnificent bald weapon of a man got so excited to be asked that he condensed a brand new clone no intelligence agency had ever cataloged, moved it to Kanglan incognito, and spent months loitering around my planet like a tourist, praying Min-Hee would escalate. I have it on good authority he daydreamed openly about squads of 6th-tier goons arriving so he could crush them and be seen doing it. Junior brother would be so moved, he told the empty air repeatedly. He kept a tally of days without violence and mourned each one. What he didn't know, the goddess of wisdom had also quietly assigned me a bodyguard, a demon rat king, 7th tier peak, pulled off the frontier under a fake mission, who spent his days on Kanglan getting massages and grumbling that the local masseurs lacked wrist strength. The night my first senior brother's clone and the demon rat king first sensed each other, both concluded the other was an assassin, and 2 7th-tier auras locked over my sleeping planet like cocked hammers before they compared employers and stood down. My protection details nearly fought each other over custody. I slept through it. I'm told it was tense. The siege actually broke thanks to the one person on the board with no hidden rank at all, Gao Kai. When he heard what was happening to his hometown, he called Min-He himself, got stonewalled with silky legal nothing, and then did something that cost him real currency. He convened his entire 7 Stars Cave cohort, 300 of the lineage's newest members, and asked them each for a favor: get your backing forces to open trade with Kanglan Star. A favor per family. He emptied his entire social wallet for 1 planet and 1 friend. He did it on the strength of a hunch. His shoulder elder kept shouting at him, "Your brother Chun is not stupid, so if he refused the black prison boy, he has a card. Help him, even if you go bankrupt. Help him." 300 favors later, Sanglan's trade rebuilt itself with better partners than it lost. The mob forgot my name in the time it takes a feed to refresh, and Min He discovered that his siege had accomplished nothing except introducing my planet to superior suppliers. He retreated to his palace to sulk strategically, and signed the other 222 horses on his list. Villain arc concluded? Not quite. File him away. His family kept one more secret, and it was so much better than he ever knew. Meanwhile, out past the border stations, the alien war councils finished their probability run on the 13th Peak Lord. My public matches as the masked Peak Lord were, by then, appointment viewing across 40 star domains, and my growth curve had terrified the actuaries. They shortlisted the 10 likeliest candidates for my true identity, all lineage members, headed by the 3 Crimson Mark's most decorated alumnus, the Three-Eyed Man, the one who'd sneered at Gao Kai's favor spending, the true experts are lonely guy. Then they paid a price that made even their own councils flinch. A 7th-tier peak Cursemaster volunteered his final 1,000 years of lifespan, swallowed 10 stolen personal effects as karmic anchors, and cast a death curse across the galaxy at all 10 names simultaneously. All 10 died, instantly, untraceably, in their homes on the Fortress main star. The Three-Eyed Man was mid-sneer, I'm told. I was number 0 on that list, never shortlisted, because candidate profiles are built from anomalies, and my public record was a 4th-tier tournament champ from a farm planet who'd failed the 7 Stars Cave. The 10 who died were, in a sense, my body doubles, conscripted posthumously. The next morning, the masked 13th Peak Lord walked into his scheduled arena match, alive, on time, and somewhere across the border a Cursemaster's 1,000 years finished purchasing nothing at all. The alien councils looked at the smoking hole in their budget, looked at the intact Peak Lord, and quietly closed the assassination office. Too many suspects. The herd protects the specific cow. Moo. Those masked matches deserve a word, by the way, because they're how I sanded off the last of my rough edges before 6th tier. As Chen Zifeng, I couldn't get a sparring date. I'd applied to 100 elite 5th tiers and been rejected by all of them. Nobody risks their record on a nobody. So I applied as the 13th Peak Lord, and suddenly everyone's calendar cleared. I fought the galaxy's monsters in weekly public matches. A Shadowpath assassin I picked out of the dark like lint. A soul master named Ratasa, whose famous mind spears broke on my pagoda while he disintegrated mid-introduction. Speed demons, bloodline princes, domain tyrants. Every loss taught them humility. Every win taught me their entire school. 10 billion regulars tuned in. My sister was one of them, which produced, at my family's dinner table, the purest running comedy of my whole double life. Chen Jie, superfan of the 13th Peak Lord, kept a countdown to his matches, quoted his fights at breakfast, and begged me, her disappointing brother, to watch the streams with her and learn something. If you trained like the Peak Lord, she told me over noodles, with an 8-year-old's total sincerity of judgment aged up into a teenager's, maybe you wouldn't have peaked at the tournament. I promised to try. She said trying wasn't enough. The Peak Lord never just tries. I agreed the Peak Lord seemed like a hard worker. She said I wouldn't understand. Reader, I understood. And then came the Wanyang Holy Sun and the 2 best slaps of my public career. The Holy Sun of the Wanyang lineage, a power that slightly outranks even the Qi Gong, is what happens when a dynasty decides to manufacture a god. Born with the 9 Chung divine vein, sealed at birth into a fire crystal, and sunk into the core of a star to marinate for 100 years. He hatched at 5th tier. His baseline cultivation method is absorb the sun. Our first match, he burned through my restraint. I was still hiding my primordial spirits, and hiding half your kit against a furnace prince has costs, and beat me, cleanly, in front of everyone. First public loss of the Peak Lord. The Wanyang fan sections composed songs. Then my soul compatibility finished its climb to 100%, we'll get to what that means, and I booked the rematch. Match 2 lasted as long as 2 slaps take. The first slap caught him mid-secret technique and turned his body into scattered embers. The Wanyang undying body reassembled him a few li away, which is the technique's entire job. The second slap arrived where he reassembled. He looked at me across the crater of his own afterimage, did the math on how many more reassemblies dignity could fund, and surrendered on the spot with the immortal words, "See you at 6th tier." The Wanyang fan sections went silent. The Qi-gang sections have never fully sat down since. And 10 billion viewers watched those two slaps and reached, in unison, the same conclusion the 12 Peak Lords had already reached in their box. The 13th Peak Lord's soul had fused with his path. 6th tier was no longer a question of if, it was a question of what the galaxy would look like the morning after. A word on what the 100% actually was, because it's the hinge of everything after. To cross from 5th tier to 6th, from surface creature to starfalling class, from planet-bound to starfaring, your soul has to fuse completely with your foundation path. For normal evolvers, this is the career killer. They cultivate someone else's path. The fit is imperfect, and souls spend decades, centuries, sometimes forever grinding toward compatibility with a system built for somebody else's shape. Whole generations of 5th tier peaks die of old age at 90-something%. My foundation path is the Martial Dao. I wrote the Martial Dao. Asking how well my soul fits my own path is asking how well I fit my own reflection. The grind took me under 2 years, and the last stretch snapped into place the night I finished the path's biggest renovation, tearing out the old requirement that practitioners must comprehend Tai Yin or Tai Yang, and rebuilding the system to accept any energy. Metal, water, thunder, frost, whatever a cultivator was born hearing, from now on, all of it was Martial Dao. The path stopped being my personal biography and became a continent with on-ramps. That renovation came, incidentally, from a homework question. A ponytailed student at my academy lecture asked what to do if she couldn't sense Tai Yin or Tai Yang at all. I gave her a placeholder answer in class, went home bothered, and rebuilt the entire path so her question would never need asking again. When the Goddess of Wisdom finished evaluating the update, 500,000 merit points in one deposit, and the chart moved from 53rd to 12th. Top 50 territory is 7th and 8th order paths exclusively, ancient things with divine authors. Number 12 was now occupied by a 5th order path whose 6th chapter didn't exist yet. The public reaction to that deserves preservation. The chart updated at midnight. The forums assumed the missing 6th order chapter had dropped and stampeded to buy it. The store showed nothing, and 1 million evolvers spent the night refreshing a shop page for a chapter that had never existed, concluding it was a network error across 40 star systems. It was not an error. The path had jumped 41 ancient titans on renovation alone. A grand scholar somewhere reportedly canceled a sabbatical, and the merit points bought the thing that changes the game board, level 6 citizenship. That rank comes with 2 artifacts of civilization. A rank 6 evolution potion, drink 1, become 6th tier, no talent required. The Alliance's retirement gift for scientists who serve humanity without ever making a fist. And a seat, a voting seat, at the Star Alliance Conference, the once-a-century assembly where the fates of hundreds of star domains get decided. File both away. The second one is the finale. Then I drank a bathtub. Not a metaphor. Breaking into 6th tier consumes energy on a planetary scale, so I requisitioned a basin of scarlet spirit liquid. The lineage steward asked me to confirm the quantity twice. I sealed the manor's underground hall, told Fu Chen that nothing short of the world ending was worth a knock, and drank a tub of liquid starlight while my body and soul rebuilt themselves into something the vacuum couldn't kill. Somewhere in hour 3, 2 7th tier auras converged quietly above the planet, my senior brother's clone and the demon rat king, both arriving to stand guard over the breakthrough, both discovering the other mid-glare, both magnificently sulky about sharing. The demon rat king had been told he was guarding a promising 4th tier. He watched the aura signature under the manor climb through 5th tier and into 6th in one sitting, and, by his own later account, checked whether time itself was malfunctioning. I stepped out of the basement as a star-falling class evolver, walked upstairs past my family's dinner, told my mother the renovation noise was plumbing, and then stepped off the planet, because I finally could. Straight up, through the roof of the sky, into raw vacuum, where the cosmos doesn't kill 6th tiers, it hosts them. I hung there in the dark above Kanglin's star, breathing chaos energy like mountain air, looking down at the world that had spent 19 years being my whole map. From up there, it's small enough to cup in two hands 50 billion people, my parents, my sister, the noodle shop, the couch. One good punch of mine could now crack it like an egg. I decided to keep not doing that, and appreciated, for the first time viscerally, that the entire social contract of high-tier civilization is just this feeling, scaled. Everyone's strong enough to break the egg, agreeing daily not to. My senior brother materialized beside me with a teleport crystal and the grin of a man whose stakeout has finally paid out. Junior brother, let's go home before the neighbors notice. One crushed crystal, one corridor through folded space, a few dozen strides across several light years, and I set foot, for the first time in my true body, on the Crimson Gang main star, under the 14 mountains of the lineage, where the other 12 peak lords were already gathering with wine. And then the lineage flipped the switch on my name. The announcement went out through the Morning Glow main star at dawn, star system-wide, then region-wide. The 13th peak lord of the Qigong lineage is Chen Zifeng of Kanglan Star. I want to walk through the shockwave in order of comedy. The Dawn Society, rulers of my home star system, read the file, and their chairman personally scrambled his guard fleet toward Kanglan to protect my parents, while muttering that his 100,000 planet system had just won the lottery on a farm world. Governor Cheng Guang of Kanglan received the news, sat down on the floor of his office, and then stood up and ordered, this is documented, a comprehensive list of every citizen who had insulted me online during the Black Prison Siege, compiled, regardless of identity, within the hour. 50 billion people's browser histories flashed before 50 billion eyes. When the list reached me, I told them to fine the 3 ringleaders and pardon the rest. You can't jail a planet for being bad at probability. My family found out from the governor in person. He arrived unannounced, told my parents their son was the 13th peak lord, and my father, bless him forever, gently counseled the most powerful official on the planet to get more sleep, because clearly the workload was showing. Cheng Guang had to transmit the official documents with the main star's seal before anyone at the table stopped humoring him. My mother went silent. My father went silent. And Chen Jie, mid-scroll on a fan forum, for me, made a sound the neighbors reported as a possible pressure system failure. Her brother, the couch disappointment, the man she had personally begged to learn from the 13th peak lord. She didn't speak to me for 2 days, then sent a 70-message apology/interrogation, then told her fan club, then was not believed by her fan club, then had the best month of her life. Gao Kai read the announcement 5 times, checked whether some other Chen Zifeng of Changlan Star existed, found none, and sat down heavily while his shoulder elder laughed the laugh of the vindicated. I told you he had a card. The next time we met, he opened his mouth to apologize for a year of consoling me about failing the trial, and I watched him relive, in visible order, every time he'd offered to put in a good word for me with my own organization. Every internal recommendation quota he'd generously reserved for my future, the works. I let him finish the whole montage before I poured his drink. That's what friends are for. And the Black Prison family experienced the news as a category of natural disaster. Min Chin, the second uncle who'd executed the trade embargo, read the file and physically collapsed at his clan elder's feet, wailing a sentence that entered regional folklore. Min He has plunged me into eternal damnation. The clan convened an emergency session with one agenda item. The family had personally, publicly, on the record, suppressed a peak lord of the Qi Gang lineage over a horse racing contract. Min He himself was collected from his palace by a man in a black coat, mid-daydream about his future clan chieftainship, and delivered home under guard, where his father finally, after 3,000 siblings worth of waiting, gave him some undivided attention. The lineage's verdict on the family was elegant. No massacre. Massacres are loud. My senior brothers simply ordered the Black Prison family's operations frozen, pending supervision. Every business halted, every member confined to their current planet, indefinitely. A commercial empire, wrapped in bureaucratic amber, left to depreciate. A dull knife drawn slowly across 300 millennia of accumulation. When people ask what Qigong power looks like, it doesn't look like fire. It looks like paperwork with no end date. But the best secret in that family belonged to the father. and the aliens spent it that same week. Min Gong, Patriarch, 7th Tier Marquis, pillar of the Star Region's commerce, model minority of assimilated species, had been, for 100,000 years, a Zerg sleeper agent. Planted before the Black Prison family existed. Activated exactly once, that week, with one order. Your son's disgrace gives you a legitimate excuse to seek an audience with the new Peak Lord. Take a suicide secret technique, burn your lifespan into 1/8 tier instant, and kill Chen Zifeng before his life imprint finishes anchoring, the narrow window where a 6th tier can still die, permanently, beyond even the Supreme Powerhouse's resurrection reach. He came to the main star with Min He in tow as his stage prop, requested an audience to offer apologies and a supreme treasure, and posted himself in the plaza below my mountain, wound like a spring, waiting for the meeting. I declined the meeting. Not out of suspicion, I'll be honest. I didn't clock him. His cover had fooled the goddesses for 1,000 centuries. I declined because I was busy. 6th-tier evolvers get one first job. Fuse your life imprint into the origin layer of the universe, the anchor that makes future resurrection possible. And Senior Brother had drilled into me that nothing, not teachers, not treasures, not apologies, outranks the anchor. So while the galaxy's most patient assassin stood in my lobby with a century of murder coiled in his meridians, I sat upstairs doing the cosmic equivalent of registering with the census and simply never came down. He waited. The window closed. My imprint set into the bones of the universe, permanent, resurrectable, uneconomical to kill. The deadliest attack ever aimed at me, and I defeated it by being bad at prioritizing guests. Some victories you earn, some you schedule. Min Gang went home unspent. Remember him one last time. My senior brothers do their audits thoroughly, and that thread gets pulled soon enough. Me? I stood on my own mountain, the 13th peak, half a planet of real estate with my name on it, watched the sunset the main star's engineers had calibrated for optimal beauty, and felt the gate light up behind my eyes. Trip 5. The preview. An immortal mountain wrapped in celestial chi, a ghost-lit wasteland, a nest of demon power vast as weather. 500 years of stay. 500 years. I informed the lineage I was entering seclusion, lay down in the palace at the peak of my mountain, and went to go be somebody's disappointing grandson. Trip 5 opened on a family meeting about what a waste I was. New body, Qin Zheng, youngest son of the most gilded family in an immortal cultivation world. And I do mean gilded. Father, Qin Bo, mutant heavenly spiritual root, the sect's designated future leader. Mother, Sun Hu, beloved daughter of the sect master himself. Grandfather, Sun Chang, 30th sect master of the moral immortal sect, the sect that has ruled the Central Earth divine continent for hundreds of thousands of years, a refining void ancient saint whose power ranks top 3 in the sect's entire history. Big brother, heavenly root, future soul transformation. Second sister, mutant earthly root, likewise bound for the summit. And then me, tested at birth. Result? No spiritual root. None. Zero aptitude for immortal cultivation in the world's first family of immortal cultivation. The palace physicians ran the test 5 times out of respect for my grandfather's blood pressure. I was the flat note in the dynasty's anthem, the empty branch on the golden tree. Servants lowered their voices around me the way you do around the recently bereaved. My grandfather, who could crack a continent by frowning at it, visited my crib once, radiated the specific sorrow of a sect master beholding a genealogical typo, and essentially never scheduled me again. Perfect. You could not design better camouflage. In 400,000 years, nobody in that world has ever once said the sentence, "Keep an eye on the rootless kid." Here's the local pecking order, so you can track the demolition later. Immortal Dao ranks. Chi refining up through Golden Core, Nascent Soul, Soul Transformation, then the Wall, and past the Wall, the demigods, refining void ancient saints, of whom the world at that moment had 4. My grandfather, holding the sect's town-guarding artifact, the Tai Hao Immortal Mirror, an heirloom so far beyond the local ceiling it might as well be a moon with opinions. And his 3 ancient rivals, each a horror in their own postcode. The Ghost Cultivator King of the Nether Palace, the Blood Demon Lord, who literally is the Blood Demon Sea, and the giant Ape Demon Saint of the Demon Saint Nest. 4 saints, 1 mirror, 100 millennia of stalemate. Above them all, allegedly, The Ascension Platform, the sect's deepest secret, a one-way door to the legendary spirit realm where every retired sect master goes, and none return. Also, and every fan of this genre just sat up, no spiritual root doesn't mean no body. The world had a half-forgotten sideline called body cultivation. No chi, no root needed, just flesh ground against heaven. Locals considered it a dead end for people who enjoy pain and poverty. Locals had never met a man whose flesh was already luxury cosmic architecture with a Martial Dao engine in it. So little Qin Zheng, the family embarrassment, tearfully announced he would pursue body cultivation, since immortality was closed to him. The family, guilt-ridden, gave me the Yunwu Blessed Land, a scenic estate of clouds and longevity springs next door to the sect, valuable mostly for extending the lifespan of, quote, the poor child. 2 maids, Jiamin and Chen Yue. Peace, privacy, and pity. I lived there for 5 centuries as the sect's saddest houseplant, and from that flower pot I quietly grew 3 separate apex predators. Predator 1, the body. Body cultivator Qin Zheng plodded along publicly at Golden Core equivalent, hopeless and harmless. Privately, the plodding went somewhat faster, through nascent soul equivalents, through soul transformation, through the wall, until the sect's rootless charity case could have arm-wrestled the 4 ancient saints simultaneously and graded their form. Predator 2, the sun. My Chung spirit needed a job, so I gave it a name, Haoran, and a career in the East Sea, the lawless island frontier where 800 heterodox sects and 3,000 crooked paths boiled away beyond the sect's reach. The Chung spirit's debut, the Black Veil Islands, a pirate sect confederation that turned out to be, delicious irony, my grandfather's own undercover asset, the sect's secret claw in the islands, run by none other than Golden Boy heir apparent Sun Mei, my cousin. Remember the name. He earns every syllable coming to him. The Chung spirit burned the Black Veil operation off the map in one evening. A dozen soul transformation overseers, 50 nascent soul captains, gone in sunfire. Took White Jade Island, a drifting island continent 2 million li across, and founded the White Jade Pavilion on it, a school. Curriculum, Martial Dao, adapted for immortal world physics. Enrollment policy, anyone. Rootless, poor, old, cursed, anyone. The East Sea's rejects arrived in fleets. Within a century, the pavilion was the strongest force on the water, run day to day by my first local disciples, Zheng Kai and 30-some others, good saplings all, while its mysterious master, the Lord of Haoran Island, acquired the reputation of a half-step ancient saint who valued privacy. Half-step. The world kept assigning me modest report cards, and I kept signing them. Predator 3, the moon. The Tai-Yin spirit stayed home, in my shadow, on family duty. You'll see why that mattered. Meanwhile, the main house was rotting in the classic way. My grandfather had a succession problem. My father, Qin Bo, the talent, versus cousin Sun Mei, the Shu family blood. Merit versus surname. He chose the surname, announced it obliquely, the way sect masters do, by transferring my father, mother, brother, and sister to Mengya Mountain, a courtesy exile to the empire's attic, effective immediately. My family packed with dignity. Grandfather kept me back at Yunwu. The rootless one wasn't worth exiling. That's a real assessment that a real steward wrote in a real ledger, and I have never enjoyed an insult more. Except Sun Mei, freshly anointed, looked at my exiled father and decided a rival transferred is not a rival deleted. He borrowed a refining void talisman, a stored one-shot strike from a long-dead Shu ancestor, sect treasure grade, handed it to a kill team of soul transformation elders, and posted them along the only road to Mengya Mountain, with instructions to make my family look like bandit statistics. The Tai-Yin spirit was drifting 80 li above the road the whole time, because of course it was. I'd sent it the moment the transfer order smelled of theater. The kill team crouched in their forest blind, activated nothing, said nothing, and their ancestral talisman self-triggered in defensive mode, read the sky, and detonated its once-per-history shield against what it correctly identified as incoming death. The shield of a dead ancient saint held my moon off for 1 full second. Genuinely impressive. Antiques are wasted on the living. Then the second passed. The commotion pulled my grandfather's mirror projection out of the sect, Tai Hao light descending like judgment, and for the first time, the Central Earth got a public mystery. A colossal Tai-Yin figure under the bright moon, face unreadable, deflecting the Tai-Hao immortal mirror's opening strike with a sleeve, exchanging a few polite catastrophic blows with the sect master above the 9 heavens, then dispersing into moonlight, unidentified. The 4 old monsters of the world all watched that bout from their respective lairs and opened files on the mysterious Tai-Yin ancient saint. The Ghost King's file, I'm told, was mostly the word "who" in increasingly large characters. Back at the sect, Grandfather deduced the ambush instantly. The talisman's aura was Shu family stock, summoned Sun Mei, and delivered the scolding of the century. Not for the murder attempt, mind you, for the timing. You moved too early, too impatiently. Then he consoled the boy. Once you're refining void, you'll understand rivals are just resources. And to seal the lesson warmly, yes, the succession is yours. Don't kill Bo, he's useful. And the rootless one, little Zheng, the grandfather paused here, almost tender. Zheng is pitiful, leave him his clouds. Zheng is pitiful, leave him his clouds. Carve that on something. We'll come back for it. And then the Blood Demon Lord, oldest monster of the North Sea, drinker of 100,000 years, looked at the political map, spotted the neglected youngest son as the perfect recruitment seam into the disgraced Qin family, and sent a blood-robed envoy sneaking into my blessed land with a shielding artifact and a script. The envoy materialized in my pavilion at dusk, all crimson menace, and opened with the classic, "Qin Zheng, I know your big secret." And I, genuinely, honestly, without theater, had to ask, which one? You have to appreciate my position. Was it the secret where I torched my grandfather's covert island network? The one where I'm the Lord of Howran Island? The one where the mysterious Tai-Yin saint who fought the sect master is my left hand? The one where the rootless houseplant benches ancient saints? The one where I'm a tourist from a higher universe wearing this dynasty like a rental? I needed the man to narrow it down. His big reveal, he discovered that my servants once bought herbs consistent with nascent soul-level body cultivation, ergo I was secretly slightly less useless than advertised, ergo blackmail, ergo serve the blood demon sea and receive eternal life as a blood thrall. The relief was indescribable. The disappointment also. He'd brought a firecracker to threaten a supernova, and the worst part was watching him wait, glowing with leverage, for my terrified compliance. I read his entire mind on the way to disassembling him. Envoy, mission, his master's whole scheme to crowbar the Central Earth open for invasion, and fed what was left to the evening. Back in his sea, the Blood Demon Lord felt his agent's beacon go out in under 4 minutes, and concluded, reasonably, that the Tai-Hao mirror must have caught him. Mean excellent guess. Wrong by 1 houseplant. Oh, and somewhere in those same years, the world gained a 3rd mystery saint, because my actual body needed field exercise too. In the buffer wastes between the wilderness and the Central Earth, the first prince of the demon saint nest, a monster who advertised himself as able to rival an ancient saint and had the resume to make it stick, picked a fight with an anonymous traveler in plain robes. The traveler stepped on him. A few times, unhurried, the way you'd flatten a shipping box for recycling. And the awakening that triggered in my bloodline was the trip's first jackpot, a physical divine ability, grown from the body itself, called rebirth from a drop of blood. 1 drop of my blood, anywhere, and I rebuild from it. The genre calls that an undying trump card. I call it a backup file with excellent compression. So now the world's intelligence agencies were tracking 3 impossible strangers, a Tai-Yin saint, a solar island lord, and a body refinement ancient saint who trampled princes, while the actual entity behind all 3 watered chrysanthemums in a pity estate and got scolded by his maids for skipping meals. Jia Min worried I was lonely. Chen Yue worried I cultivated too hard for someone in my condition. My condition. Ladies, if only. 100 years turned the political wheel. Sun Mei, force-fed the sect's treasury, finally broke through to refining void, a 2nd ancient saint for the sect, the succession sealed in law. And my grandfather, freed at last from home defense duty by his heir's promotion, did what 100,000 years of unchallenged dominance teaches. He took the Tai-Hao immortal mirror off its stand, walked out of the mountain for the first time in centuries, and went hunting. Target selection, per his own counsel. Not the 3 old monsters, they have trump cards, killing them is expensive. Start with the soft one, the upstart. That East Sea Island lord of unclear provenance. Soft, the upstart. Me. You can hear his logic, a half-step ancient saint parvenu with no ancient backing, the cheapest possible demonstration that the moral immortal sect still owns the world. The mirror light fell out of the 9 heavens onto White Jade Island with no warning, a beam engineered to pierce the island through and erase every living thing on it, my 100,000 pavilion disciples included, as an opening statement. My students looked up and saw the sky become an executioner, and then the sky met the law embodiment. I let the Chung spirit take its true working size, the technique where a cultivator becomes the law of heaven and earth made flesh, and a figure of uncounted myriad Zhang stood up out of the sea, dense with solar power like a second sun had chosen to be person-shaped, and covered the entire 2 million li island with one raised palm. The Tai Hao mirror's annihilation beam, the strike that had ended arguments for 100 millennia, landed on the back of that hand, spread, thinned, and wore away to warmth. My grandfather, hovering above the 9 heavens with his artifact, watched his sect's ultimate argument get weathered like spring rain and performed the fastest doctrinal revision in his personal history. The soft target was C, his own words to his own counsel, later, Rowway, the hardest stone in the world. Min ancient saint at minimum, possibly beyond the refining void limit entirely. Category, do not fight. Category, in fact, recruit. Before those 3 old monsters recruit him first. He sent a voice transmission of exquisite diplomacy. Perhaps we have misunderstood each other. Perhaps we might cooperate. Name a venue, row, and withdrew with the unhurried dignity of a man pretending his opening move hadn't just bounced. The venue he proposed, the Yunwu Blessed Land. Neutral, unfortified, harmless. The home, as it happened, of his pitiful, rootless grandson. He landed there early, instructed my maids not to let anyone up the mountain. I await a fellow Taoist, and sat facing the East Sea to rehearse his pitch. Jia Min and Chun Yue, 2 golden core girls hosting the scariest man alive, nearly fainted twice, then spent the wait gossiping downstairs about what VIP could possibly make the sect master himself sit and wait. And the young master picked that afternoon to come out of seclusion and take a walk up his own mountain. They didn't stop me. Family, after all. I climbed the steps the slow way, on foot, no arts, half an hour of mountain path, because some conversations you want to arrive at with your pulse settled. My grandfather sensed his grandson coming and didn't turn. Zheng, I've spoken with Mei. Your parents will be transferred back soon. Go down, child. Grandfather has weighty matters today. A fellow Taoist is coming, on business that concerns the whole Central Earth. I walked past him and sat down in the seat reserved for the fellow Taoist. He frowned, indulgent, grandfatherly, a man deciding not to be annoyed at the simple boy. And I looked at him over the tea he'd set for someone terrifying, and asked, "So, what did you want to cooperate with me on, grandfather?" I have watched a lot of faces do a lot of things across 6 worlds. I keep a private museum. That face, the slow landslide from indulgence through confusion into the first cold drop of comprehension, chased by frantic disbelief while his 100,000-year composure scrambled for footing, hangs in the museum's entrance hall, lit from 3 angles. He hit me with every scrying art he had, dozens of them in a heartbeat, trying to find the possession, the puppet strings, the something. Because the alternative was that the family's writing off had been, for 500 years, backwards. The arts came back with nothing. Same soul, same grandson. The mirror rose off his back on reflex, wobbling with its master's pulse. I am Qin Zheng, I confirmed, and also the Lord of Haoran Island. Out east, on cue, the sun aura over the sea stood up and waved. While he processed that, the Taiyin spirit was already at Mangya Mountain collecting my family. The guard detail of soul transformation wardens, protectors, challenged the visitor, recognized the young master's face, asked for the sect master's token, and were gently informed there wasn't one, and it wasn't going to matter. Then the moon put my parents, brother, and sister into a sleeve. A word about the sleeve, because my father's reaction is the whole immortal world in one scene. Universe in the sleeve is a heaven-grade art. A soul transformation expert folds a li of space into a pocket. Min ancient saint might manage 100 li. My family, sitting inside the sleeve dimension mid-flight, watched my brother estimate its size out loud for reassurance, and my father, an almost sect master, did the measurements himself, went pale in a way exile never made him, and stopped the conversation with arithmetic. Children, this sleeve is not 100 li. Sons don't get to watch their fathers recalculate them very often. Recommended. Negotiations on the mountaintop, grandfather and I, 1 pot of tea. My asks, 1. The moral immortal scripture, the sect master only crown text with the Dao integration essentials in it. Granted, on one condition of secrecy, he was past pretending he could refuse. 2. Everything about the ascension platform, granted before I finished the sentence. 3. The right to spread Martial Dao openly in the central earth. Change the condition, this one is impossible. Credit where due, the old man knew exactly what he was refusing. Immortal Dao isn't the sect's tool, it's the sect's bloodline, the imperial gene that makes their empire an empire. Let a rival cultivation system take root, and you've replumbed the dynasty at the foundation. He'd sooner have given me the throne, he actually floated that, next sect master, sincerely, as the cheaper concession. The audacity of the counteroffer almost earned my respect. Sorry, can't let you teach kung fu, but would you accept the entire church? Then forget it, I said, and stood up. And my grandfather, because 100,000 years of the mirror settles everything is a reflex, not a policy, decided that before this new fact of nature left his pavilion, he'd at least take its measurements. The Tai Hao mirror flared. Family reunion, Phase 2, combat. We went up over the blessed land, and the fight rearranged local meteorology. Understand what the mirror is. Within the central earth, wired into the continent's ley lines, it makes its holder functionally unbeatable. The 4 old monsters had spent 100 millennia declining that exact matchup. My grandfather threw the full artillery of a dynasty at his rootless grandson. At the foot of the mountain, my 2 golden core maids had been having a quiet afternoon. Jia Min and Chen Yue looked up at the sudden apocalypse over their heads, identified combatant 1 as the sect master of the moral immortal sect, sacred artifact blazing, and then identified combatant 2, the figure whose blood chi was rocking the sacred artifact like a rowboat, as the young master. Their young master. The delicate one. The one they'd spent 5 centuries reminding to eat. The historical record of their reaction is 2 jaws, dropped in unison, holding for the duration of the engagement. Chen Yue, to her credit, eventually produced the only fully accurate analysis anyone offered that day. The sect master can't beat the young master? No, Chen Yue, he could not, and I walked him backwards across the sky. Not cleverly, frontally. Qi and blood in red banners across 100,000 li, every mirror light strike caught and spent, the sect master of the moral immortal sect conceding altitude in his own homeland, in view of every sensitive cultivator on the continent. The blood demon lord watched from his sea and reported his scalp crawling. The demon saint scried the fight, recognized the face on the giant made of bloodlight, cross-referenced it with rootless Qin grandson, and they, a being 100,000 years old, they refused his own senses for a full minute. The Ghost King simply began packing. Grandfather broke for the mountain, the correct move, the only move, and I followed him to the gates and introduced the sect to a family intervention. 3 of me took position around Moral Immortal Mountain, the body wreathed in qi and blood like a red dawn, the Chung spirit blazing, the Tai Yin spirit cold and vast, and the Jing and Chung merged their fields into a black and white Taiji millstone the size of a weather system, and we ground the mountain's defenses. For the first time in 400,000 years, the Moral Immortal Mountain, anchor of the world, the pillar that holds up the idea of ordering people around, disappeared from view under someone else's power, wrapped in rolling red mist, its 100 millennium formation lattice screaming at full load, its disciples experiencing theology from the receiving end. Inside, my grandfather drove the mirror as the formation's heart and held, barely, wired into the continent itself, everything the ancestors ever buried, spending at once. Sun Mei stood beside him and watched the rootless cousin he'd never once bothered to be wary of, pressing their entire civilization flat, and developed, per witnesses, a lifelong flinch. The mountain held. Genuinely, it held. Plugged into the ley lines of a continent, the old pile survived my full 3-body strike, and I stood down with honest appreciation. A pity, I said to the red mist, and left. I hadn't come to demolish them anyway. I'd come to take a measurement of my own, of me, using their apocalypse-proof mountain as the bathroom scale, and to make 1 point at civilizational volume. The world has a second pillar now, and it teaches Kung Fu. The point landed. Within the season, the other 3 ancient saints came calling at White Jade Island, not with armies, with tribute. The Ghost King and the Demon Saint sent their core inheritances, the crown techniques of 100 millennia, as introduction gifts. The Blood Demon Lord came in person, by incarnation. His real body can't leave his sea, which is the kind of design flaw you only confess to your new landlord, and handed over the Blood Sea Undying Law, his actual survival secret, the reason the sect never managed to kill him. Protection money, paid in scripture. I accepted everything graciously, read it all in an afternoon, filed the useful parts into the Martial Dao, and reflected, not for the first time, that the fastest way to a monster's heart is to audit a bigger monster in public. The family settled on White Jade Island. My parents got an immortal cave with better chi than the sect ever gave them. My sister Qin Shui needed a week to stop double-checking whether her little brother was a body snatcher. And my father, who had seen through many things during his 100 years in the attic, delivered the entire family verdict in one line. Jung, do it your way. My mother just held my sleeve for a while. Mask off minute, moving on. Another 100 years of cultivation, and I went back to the sect for the conversation that actually mattered, the one above my grandfather's pay grade. One errand first, though, before the sect. A landlord's errand, and my favorite kind of flex, the invisible kind. White Jade Island, my vast floating home, had a design quirk. Every 2,000 years, it sinks. The whole island, 2 million li of it, rides down to the lightless seafloor on a cycle driven by a deep-sea eye, a suction vent in the ocean bottom that swallows and recirculates the sea itself. Fine behavior for a wandering rock, unacceptable for the permanent holy land of a young cultivation system. So I went down personally, down where the pressure flattens soul transformation experts and the dark is older than the sect, and found the eye, and around it, the welcoming committee, ancient deep-sea behemoths, leviathans that had ruled that trench since before the sect wrote its first rule. They came gliding in to investigate the intruder. I let one thread of my aura off the leash, and I want it recorded that creatures without language, without cultivation manuals, without a single scrap of civilized learning, executed the most unanimously correct decision I witnessed in 500 years in that world. They left at 10 times the speed they'd arrived, and by witness accounts did not stop for several days. I sealed the eye in an hour. The island never sank again. Somewhere in the pavilion's chronicles, it's written as a miracle. It was plumbing. Then, the sect. I didn't knock this time. A century earlier, I'd pressure tested their formations from outside. My comprehension had read the whole lattice under load, the way you learn a lock by watching it strain. Now I simply walked through the wards, 400 millennia of layered defenses parting around me like beaded curtains, and materialized in a chair in the sectmaster's private hall, mid-meeting, between one sentence and the next. Sun Mei was there, in the middle of some brave talk about how, with the spirit realm ancestors behind them, that Qin Zheng— "What about me?" I asked, from the chair. The man's soul aged a decade in a heartbeat. And then, because some people simply cannot read a room even when the room has walked in wearing its own weather, he started to object to my presence near the sect's secrets. "Shut up," I said. I want to be precise about what happened next, because it's the shortest villain resolution of my entire career, and the villain had earned every economy of it. Sun Mei, refining void ancient saint, anointed heir, the man who sent assassins with an heirloom talisman after my exiled family, who spent a century being warned and coddled and forgiven upward, went out like a snuffed wick. One glance. His body sat down where it stood, politely, vacantly, and stopped containing anyone. My grandfather looked at his dead heir, sighed the sigh of a man closing a long losing account, and said nothing in his defense. Nothing. 100,000 years teaches you to recognize a settled bill. "Take me to the ascension platform," I said, and he did. Deep under the mountain, in a secret realm the sect masters keep from their own elders, a stone gateway barely half a meter tall, silver-white inside, humming with stabilized spatial force. The one-way door to the spirit realm. Every retired sect master for 400,000 years had crawled through that little door to paradise, which is why the sect endures. The ancestors upstairs are the true deterrent. And the moment I laid eyes on it, the Gate of Myriad Realms behind my own eyes rang like a struck bell, and quietly, invisibly, copied the spirit realm's world coordinates out of the platform into itself. A sixth mark on my gate's doorframe, the sect's 400 millennium monopoly, their one-way toll bridge to heaven, and my door just photographed the address, meaning I could now visit their paradise whenever I pleased, without their platform, without their permission, without them ever knowing. My grandfather noticed nothing. Nobody noticed anything. Some heists don't even disturb the dust. "Call your ancestors down," I said, "the ones who can actually negotiate." He performed the summoning rites, and the platform lit, and down the stabilized channel came a projection. Ming Hui Immortal, the sect's strongest living ancestor, late-stage Dao integration, the retirement home heavyweight who only descends when the sect faces extinction. He arrived, per the Ancestors' Council resolution, to identify which ancient monster had possessed the Qin boy. Their unanimous theory, since a lower world producing me organically violated their physics, and, if needed, to fight. He looked at me for a long, long moment, checked for possession seams, found a soul and body in perfect native fit, recalculated, and then this Dao integration immortal, this sealing of the world ancestor, smiled like a salesman and said, "The little friend wishes to spread Martial Dao? It is not impossible." My grandfather made a noise. He'd spent a century holding the line his ancestors gave him, Martial Dao over the sect's dead body, and the chief ancestor folded in one look. Because Ming Hui had seen what the locals couldn't, not my power, my slope. A talent that would treat the spirit realm's own ladder as an escalator. You don't suppress a future like that. You invest early and pray it remembers you fondly. So we did business, and the terms tell you everything about who was selling. Martial Dao, permitted across the Central Earth, forever, never to be suppressed openly or quietly. Martial cultivators who reach 6th rank equivalents. Granted use of the Ascension platform, same as immortals. And the guarantee, because I don't take an immortal's word for anything, a Dao oath, sworn in the name of the spirit realm itself, which summoned an actual thread of the spirit realm's world consciousness down through the sky to witness and countersign. I watched Heaven's own compliance department wrap around the old immortal like a seal. Even an immortal king doesn't breach a Dao oath. That is a contract. His asking price for all of it? When you ascend someday, help the sect once, within your capability. A blank favor, self-defined, unenforceable. The man was buying futures. His parting instruction to my grandfather was even balder. The next sect master shall be of the little friend's direct bloodline. And so, my big brother Qin Hao, 3rd generation immortal, solid, kind, chronically overshadowed, became heir to the 400 millennium dynasty on the strength of sharing a mother with the houseplant. My father declined the throne first. A century in the attic had cured him of wanting it, which might be the healthiest outcome in this whole family saga. The scripture, by the way, grandfather handed me the moral immortal scripture without being asked twice, and its Dao integration essentials opened 4 new route drafts for my 7th order chapter. None of them were IT. All of them were fuel. Then the world tried to cap me, and I picked the lock in the most literal way I know. 200 more years of cultivation took me to the true edge, the wall between 6th and 7th order, between refining void and Dao integration. And there I met the ceiling that isn't a metaphor. World suppression. The Central Earth itself, drained thin by ages, physically cannot host a Dao integration birth. That's why the ancestors ascend to break through. That's why every genius in local history plateaued at infinitely close. The heavens themselves lean on the door. So I split the load. Body, Jing spirit, Chung spirit, each cultivated separately to the absolute brink, each individually legal under the world's limit. And then, in a small boat on the rim of the endless sea, alone at dusk, I fused all 3 at once, quantity slamming into quality, 3 brinks becoming 1 breach, and stepped through the ceiling into Dao integration, while the world's suppression was still deciding which of me to lean on. Up in the spirit realm, the sect's ancestors felt it happen and held an emergency symposium, a Dao integration birth in a lower world. Ancestor Wen Shu, the cranky one, was mid-rant about Ming Hui overrating the boy when the aura reached him through the platform, and his recorded reaction is 2 words long and neither word is dignified. Their cosmology had one axiom: the pond cannot grow a dragon. The pond had just grown a dragon, and worse, a dragon that now didn't need their ladder. A Dao integration expert can survive the void between worlds bare, no platform required, which is exactly what I spent my last 30 years there doing. I gave my parents enough refining void resources to retire into demigodhood, walked the world one last slow lap, and then tore a slit in the sky and stepped outside the world entirely, drifting alone in the raw void turbulence between realities, the place that had instant-killed me at the divine weapon rift all those trips ago. Now it was a lecture. I floated in the grinding dark for 3 decades, watching naked space do its violence, and my understanding of the space rules went up like a launched flare. The spirit realm hung far above in the black, vast as a sun made of law, and I looked at it the way you look at a city you have the keys to and haven't visited yet. Not yet. On my schedule. Through my door. Housekeeping, before the gate, pulled me home. The white jade pavilion, 16 million martial cultivators and climbing, the sect converted from enemy to distribution partner, my brother on the throne, the Dao oath humming in the sky. And my final arrangement, the one I never skip now, I parked the body. Flew it to a secret place, shut it down warm, and left it, an 18 realm class asset in cold storage, so that if I ever return to that world by consciousness, I don't restart as an infant. I wake up as the strongest thing in it, pre-installed. Then home. 500 years, closed out in under 4 months of main world time. My longest trip, my biggest world, and the first one where I left not just a legacy, but a treaty, countersigned by a heaven. The upload that followed broke the pattern of every upload before it, and the pattern of a few careers besides. The 6th order chapter of the Martial Dao, bodied out with the body cultivation lineage's deep flesh mining, the part of that world's heritage everyone else had dismissed as a dead end, went to the goddess of wisdom, and the evaluation came back. 400,000 merit points. And the chart position came back with it. 6th, not 53rd, not 12th, 6th on the star region's chart of 100, where the top 10 are 7th order paths with millennia of pedigree, and the top 3 are the personal monuments of the region's only 3 evolutionary grand scholars in its entire recorded history. A path younger than some cheeses was now ranked above 94 ancient titans, and the analysts' models had stopped converging. The revenue share that quarter came to just under 3 trillion civilization coins, which stopped being a number I could feel, and became a weather condition on my account statement. And because the buyers of the 6th chapter kept respectfully failing to understand it, I did the thing that finally made Grand Scholar Zifeng a household ghost. I recorded lecture videos. A dozen of them, plain-spoken, first chapter up through 3rd stage, uploaded to the founder's channel like a cooking series. 10 billion followers materialized. The comment sections filled with evolvers reporting decade-old bottlenecks dissolving in 20 minutes, elders switching their grandchildren's paths, rival streamers quietly deleting their own Martial Dao explained content. Donations poured in, billions, from strangers, to the anonymous account of a man they believed was an ancient grand scholar, and I confess I never turned the donations off. It's not the money, it's the principle of being tipped by the galaxy for explaining your own homework. 2 pieces of unfinished main world business resolved themselves while I'd been away being a grandson. The Black Prison family first. My second senior brother, conducting the promised supervision audit of the Frozen Empire, mostly as a courtesy to me, dug 1 layer deeper than anyone had in 100,000 years and hit the seam, patterns consistent with alien contact. He moved instantly, invoked the Star-Lord as backstop, and had the Patriarch Min Gang detained and delivered to a specialist, an 8th order soul-type evolver of the Alliance, the kind who doesn't read your memories but reconstructs your whole life in an illusion world and watches you live it. 100,000 years of perfect cover unraveled in 1 session. Zerg Sleeper, planted before the family existed, activation order and all. The suicide strike he'd been saving for me came out in the replay, too. The audience learned how close the plaza outside my mountain had come to being a crater with an apology in it. Collusion with alien races is the one crime the Alliance has no gradations for. The Black Prison family stopped being a declining empire and started being a case file. Min He, somewhere in a confinement estate, presumably heard what his father had actually been all along, and I find I have 1 drop of genuine pity for him. The man spent his whole life clawing toward a throne that was never anything but a listening post. And the Wanyang Holy Son, second. His challenge applications had been stacking up in my inbox the whole time I was away. He'd broken through to 6th tier, unlocked his 100 years of Star Core Foundation, and wanted his rematch with the 13th Peak Lord, confident the new math favored him. I declined. Not from mercy, from honesty. I'd come back from the immortal world at 6th tier limit with a 7th order path already half drafted, and beating him again would have been bullying with extra steps. He interpreted my refusal as fear for about a day, Then the news reached him of what my seclusion had produced, and he requested a Wanyang true crystal from his master and dove into the core of a star to train, on purpose, at risk of incineration, to close the gap. I respect that man tremendously. He keeps treating me as a rival, and it keeps making him stronger, and one day that delusion is going to carry him somewhere genuinely great. Then came the space models, and the single funniest tutoring session in the history of the Qi Gang lineage. Context. To build my ideal 7th Order chapter, I needed real command of the space rules, and human civilization's on-ramp to space is a curriculum of 965 basic spatial models, formalized 600 millennia ago. Mastering all 965 is entry-level literacy for 7th-tier kings. My teacher's true form is a star-sea roaming gang, a species that swims through space the way fish swim through rivers. He's the region's presiding authority on the subject. So I visited my teacher with a homework question. The Red Gang Star Lord, delighted, his monster disciple had finally come to be taught something, asked what I was stuck on. The 876th model, I said, and demonstrated the first 875. I watched a being older than some star clusters recalculate his week. Comprehending the full set is a 7th-tier king's milestone. His newest disciple, months into 6th tier, was stuck on number 876 the way you're stuck on a crossword. He composed himself magnificently, demonstrated the 876th model once, one rotation of spatial force, no commentary, and I caught it on the first pass and thanked him. There was a pause I will treasure into my 9th tier. Teacher, I said, into that pause, could you demonstrate the remaining 89? Altogether is fine. And this ancient sovereign of 1,000,000 planets, who by his own later confession had prepared explanations, pedagogy, the whole mentoring arc he'd been rehearsing for months, silently, for half a day, rotated space model after space model in front of his disciple like the galaxy's most expensive projector. No words were needed. No words were possible. When it was over, I bowed, genuinely grateful, and left a happy student. And the Star Lord sat alone in his crimson hall and asked his smart assistant, in a small voice, whether it was normal for a master to feel like a piece of audio-visual equipment. The assistant's reply is not recorded. His other diary entry from that season is, because he repeated it to my senior brother. Wait, am I about to be overtaken by my own disciple? Sir, yes, but respectfully and with citations. The last stretch to 965 needed something the Fortress main star couldn't supply: unstable space. The universe at home is too well made, space-time like polished steel, rules tucked out of sight. But out on the alien battlefields, where supreme powerhouses have brawled for epochs, there are permanent spatial cracks, wounds that never healed, leaking raw rule force. My teacher's advice? Go study at a crack. Also his advice, delivered with feeling: do not go in your true body, you monster. Use a clone. Conveniently, I am my own clone department. I dispatched the Cheng Spirit by commercial spaceship, 18 days, 862 wormhole jumps, economy class, the anonymity was the point, to battlefield C24763, a war continent adrift in deep space, a fifth of a light year across, contested between humanity and the Black Abyss clan, and home to a modest 10-meter permanent crack. The locals found me first. 5 Black Abyss elites, 6th-tier peaks, led by a captain named Kekshin with the warm managerial style of a trash compactor, had just discovered an ancient sealed space inheritance in a valley and lost one of their own to its defenses. Then they saw a lone human spaceship approaching and settled on a plan. Capture the human, force him to loot the human-keyed vault, then take everything and dispose of the tool. They shot down my ship as a conversation opener and closed in with the smiles of people who believe they are the plot. If you want to live, listen to us, said the vanguard. How can I live? I asked meekly, and let them walk all the way in. Kekshin, to his credit as a manager, spent his subordinates like coupons, hung back cold-eyed while my Taiyang True Fire domain unfolded across 10,000 li, and his men burned mid-lunge, using their deaths to price my strength. Then he raised his clan's vaunted Black Abyss domain, declared that nothing could pierce it, and got most of the way through the sentence. The space rules I'd half-mastered folded me through his impenetrable wall mid-word. He experienced the human tier system's fine print, that a 6th tier who comprehends like a 7th is a 7th with a modest engine, and then he experienced becoming nutrition. Waste not, the Cheng Spirit runs on exactly this. 5 storage rings, 1 battlefield merit deposit, and then the valley, and the sealed space, and the part of this trip I didn't plan and won't forget. The vault admitted my battlefield pass, human-keyed, exactly as the Black Abyss had feared, and inside was a mountain in a bottled sky, and on the mountain, waiting, the last echo of a man. Fan Jing. 8th Order Evolver, a lone wanderer famous a million years ago who'd been ambushed on this nothing battlefield by a Black Abyss high noble with a soul-breaking art, crawled in here to die and left his everything behind a human-only lock, then held on as a fading obsession for a million years, waiting for one countryman to walk in. I was the first. He asked what year it was. I told him. He was quiet for a moment, a million years of moment, and then he skipped his own grief and gave me the full estate like a man settling a tab, an 8th Order armor, 1,000 cubic meters of cosmic crystal, hard currency at 100 billion universal coins, the kind of wealth even peak lords don't carry. A bloodline serum of the 3-headed ice wolf, the found a dynasty kind. And the crown piece, an 8th Order soul defense treasure, a sky blue droplet cracked from the blow that killed him, priceless even broken, because soul defense doesn't come up for sale at any tier. The vault began collapsing as his last strength went. He pushed the storage bracelet into my hands, and as he came apart he murmured, to himself, not to me, 2 names. Looking Moonstar region, Tianchen Star, his home. A man holds the door for a million years, and at the end, the thing that comes up isn't his treasures or his killer, it's the address. I didn't promise him anything, he didn't ask, but I wrote the names down where I write things that aren't finished. File that with the others. This one comes back sooner than you'd think. Getting to the crack itself was a tour of frontier etiquette. The rupture sits inside a floating mountain range garrisoned by humans on one half and Black Abyss on the other, and an armored sergeant flew down to process me with the bored friendliness of a man who's seen every kind of pilgrim. Was I here to fight? His whole face lit up. Fresh blood for the line. Stick with me, brother. We'll bag some abyssals. No, I said, just here to comprehend space at the crack. The light went out of him like I'd announced I was here to inventory the gravel. He walked me in anyway and briefed me on the strangest institution on that battlefield. The crack is a truce zone. Humans meditate on one side, Black Abyss experts meditate on the other, and for 100,000 years, by unwritten agreement, nobody swings, because everyone there is trying to learn the same thing, and rule comprehension is the one hunger both species respect. Unwritten, he stressed, not unbreakable. Don't sink too deep into trance. 2 species at war, sharing a study hall around the wound they'd torn in the universe. I've seen holy sites with worse theology. And the crack itself paid double. Standing at the rupture's edge, comprehension feasting on raw space, the last models fell in days. But the second payment was the strange one. The Gate of Myriad Realms, deep in my mind, trembled for the first time ever and updated its own terms. Near the permanent wound in space, its accumulation of boundary-breaking source power, the fuel of all my travels, fixed at 1 wisp per 333 days since the beginning, accelerated. 333 days became 298. Read that again the way I did. The gate's fuel economy is not a constant. It's a function of where you park. And the galaxy's large battlefields hold permanent cracks, not 10 meters long, but 10,000 li, millions of li. Somewhere out there, parked correctly, my once-a-year door might become a monthly service. The alien battlefield, humanity's meat grinder, had quietly revealed itself to be my personal fuel depot. I filed that under after the 7th tier. Because the 965th model snapped into place on a quiet afternoon at home, an inverted pyramid of folded space, the last brick of literacy, and the whole spatial curriculum went transparent, and I looked at the 7th Order chapter I'd been drafting across 2 worlds and 400 years of subjective time, and it wasn't a draft anymore. My Dao was ready. Time to break the tier that makes kings. First, though, a stranger on a forum called my bluff, and I want this conversation in the record because it's the moment my cover story died of natural causes. Linglong Scholar, the ancient grand scholar from the Founders Forum, my 23 millennia pen pal, messaged me a quiz question, the way he does. Which stage of any evolution path is the most important? I answered honestly from my own drafting table, the 7th. He pounced with the delight of a man springing a trap he'd built lovingly. Wrong, Junior, it's the 8th. The 8th is where you master world creation, the opening of an internal world, the foundation of everything above it. And he was mid-lecture when I sent over a few pages of my 7th order working theory. The theory where the Taiji domain, saturated with all 965 spatial models, folds into an internal small world, one full tier early. The forum went quiet for over an hour. On his research planet across the galaxy, I know this from him. Later, Linglong Scholar ran my pages through everything he had, verified they weren't insane, verified they were merely impossible, and typed back the sentence that ended 3 years of anonymity theater. Which evolutionary grand scholar are you exactly? I told him I wasn't one. He didn't believe me, because the alternative, that the anonymous author was a 6th tier 20-something drafting 8th tier mechanics on a farm planet couch, violated more of his axioms than the math did. I let him not believe me. A man needs his axioms. He had also, without knowing it, just handed me the final quality check. If the galaxy's certified geniuses read your 7th order chapter and demand to see your Grand Scholar license, the chapter is ready. So I broke through. I want to describe the breakthrough properly, because it wasn't a door, it was a construction project with a hunger problem. Sealed hall under my 13 mountain peaks. The full 965 spatial models raised inside my dantian like pillars, holding open a permanent volume of folded space. Tai Yin and Tai Yang poured into that scaffold, cycling into Tai Ji, and the moment the structure recognized itself as a world, an embryonic 10-li universe with my surname on it, it did what all newborns do. It screamed for food. Hunger like a black hole with an opinion. A world under construction eats on a world's scale, and I'd stockpiled accordingly. Bottles and basins of scarlet spirit liquid drained in gulps while the small world in my core inhaled the energy and paved with it, sky, ground, the first permanent black and white weather of a cosmos 10 li across. Somewhere in hour 6, I was drinking the lineage's strategic reserves like breakfast juice and apologizing to no one. 10 million kilometers overhead, meanwhile, my teacher had gathered all 12 senior peak lords for a group lessons on space rules, and conspicuously not invited me, a kindness to the 9 6th-tier seniors' morale, since the lesson was material I'd already eaten. Mid-lecture, the 4th peak lord asked why junior brother wasn't invited. The Star Lord was still choosing a diplomatic answer when the breakthrough aura came up off the planet like a tide and answered for him. 12 peak lords stood in orbit and watched their youngest colleague, months into 6th tier, weeks from his last miracle, cross into the 7th. And the Star Lord, tuned finer than any of them, caught the part that mattered. Inside the breakthrough signature, the unmistakable pulse of a bounded world being born. Min, internal world. The 8th tier foundation, forming inside a 7th tier breakthrough, 1 tier early, in real time, right below them. The public reveal was its own theater. All the main star felt someone in the lineage crossed to 7th. The betting markets ran through the 9 eligible seniors, the 4th peak lord's seniority, the 6th's physique, the 8th's dark horse odds, with exactly one name excluded from every list on grounds of obvious absurdity. When the lineage's official announcement dropped, the 13th, the region's forums produced in aggregate a sound I can only describe as 1 million people repeating one syllable. A 7th tier under 30. The Alliance's own records could count the precedents on scattered fingers, and their statistics said 70% of such cases reached the 8th. My senior brothers celebrated for 3 days. The 4th through 12th peak lords celebrated slightly less loudly, on account of the sudden managerial question of whether to keep calling me junior brother. Strength outranks seniority in the cosmos, which I settled by decree. I'd been junior brother through every kindness they'd shown a disguised farm kid. Junior brother, I'd stay. And what a 7th tier it was to walk around in. The Taiji small world turning in my core, 10 li of newborn cosmos, radiating world power, the 8th tier evolver's signature weapon, the nearly cheating force that blesses every strike and knits every wound, a full tier ahead of schedule. In the virtual world's test range, I threw one casual punch, no rules invoked, and a planet-sized simulation target went to fragments. Freshly minted 7th tiers rank as generals. The assessors quietly filed my baseline at King class and flagged the file for review. Wanyang Holy Sun, upon hearing all of it, reportedly went deeper into his star. Beyond the border, the alien war councils convened over my file one last time. The transcript of that meeting, intelligence intercepts are a perk of peak lordship, reads like a support group. General Pan Yang's faction had burned a Curse Master's Millennium, killing 10 wrong suspects. The Zerg had spent 100 Millennium sleeper agent on an assassination I'd no-showed by accident. And now the target was 7th tier, life-imprinted, resurrection-backed, and parked inside the Star-Lord's own perception. The minutes conclude, in effect, we can no longer prevent the second Red Gang. We should have strangled the cradle. Which cradle? Unknown. That was always your problem, gentlemen. Wrong cradle. And then, with the galaxy still vibrating, the smart assistant chimed with the most mundane possible sentence. Master, the Star Alliance Conference is about to convene. Will you attend? The Star Alliance Conference. The once-a-century assembly of the Anon Star Alliance. Hundreds of star domains worth of disputes, budgets, and destinies settled by the votes of level 6 citizens and up. My new citizenship ranks Crown Privilege. My first instinct was to skip it. Conferences are where cultivation time goes to die, until my drinking friend Tao Kai, a red-nosed level 6 of tens of thousands of years vintage whom I'd met in the founders' circles, heard my plan to abstain and nearly dropped his cup. Skip it, Brother 13. It's free treasure with extra steps. And he laid out the real economy of galactic democracy. Every unresolved dispute between star domains comes down to a floor vote, and both sides court the voters. Openly, lavishly. A level 6 citizen's single vote in a tight contest between two star regions can be worth more than a decade of battlefield merit, paid up front in treasures by whichever side wants your hand raised. I attended the conference. Obviously, I attended the conference. Tao Kai, matchmaking cheerfully, brought me the season's marquee dispute. The Looking Moon Star region versus the Golden Dragon Star region, deadlocked over territory, both shopping for votes. Looking Moon. I checked the name twice. Fan Jing's home. The address a dying man had murmured into a collapsing vault 1,000,000 years ago. The entry in my unfinished business file. Their envoy, a courteous young man named Wen, laid out their offer like a man setting a table for guests he can't quite afford. A 7th Order Soul Defense treasure. A Jianmu fragment that can rebuild a 7th tier body. Azure Heaven Water. A weak region's entire dignity converted to gifts because weak regions don't get to have dignity at conferences, they get to have receipts. I was already going to say yes. The universe occasionally hands you a chance to pay a dead man's tab with a living hand, and you don't haggle over it. And then the Golden Dragon Star region sent their man, and the universe handed me something else. My ending. Cui Long. Tall, golden-robed, draped in the bone-deep confidence of a region that owns its own weather. He didn't bring an offer. He looked me over, the anonymous new level 6, Mr. 13, fresh currency in the room, and explained, in the tone of a man doing me a kindness, that I was new to citizenship, that the Golden Dragon Star region's strength spoke for itself, and that I shouldn't forge ties against them. And Tao Kai threw him out of the room mid-sentence. Physically. The door had barely sealed before my old drinking friend was vibrating with fury on my behalf. Threats? At a vote-buying dinner? Who threatens the electorate? And in the hallway outside, I heard about this exchange later, and I've had it framed next to average aptitude. Cui Long shrugged off Tao Kai's warning about my potential with the completed, notarized, museum-grade version of every mistake everyone has ever made about me. So what if he becomes a 7th level citizen someday? He can do nothing to my Golden Dragon Star region. It's nothing more than the well water not intruding on the river water. The well water not intruding on the river water. Tao Kai walked back in, poured 2 cups, and delivered his verdict on the man with the satisfied calm of a prophet who drinks. Who is the well, and who is the river, heaven knows. I drank to that. Heaven did know, actually. Heaven had been taking detailed notes for 3 years. So let me close the ledger where it stands, the way I closed it for myself that night, on a mountain that is legally mine, above a fortress planet, in a galaxy that has now threatened me in every currency it has. 3 years ago, I was a 19-year-old on a couch, drafted to die on a battlefield as 1 ticket in 100,000. Since then, 6 worlds. A monk who rewrote a dynasty's martial arts at 8. A celestial master who walked down the clouds and unmade a demon sect's entire future. Min Emperor who cooked 36 gods in a furnace made of sacred mountains and handed their cattle the keys. A chained devil king who ate his own prison, flattened heaven's favorite sect with one step of the moon, and left a world a compliance mechanism instead of a tomb. A rootless grandson who outnegotiated a heaven, stole the address of paradise, and made his family's 400 millennium dynasty a franchise of his night school. And at home, quietly, in 3 years of local time, creator of the number 6 evolution path in the star region. Grand Scholar Zifeng to 10 billion students who've never seen his face. 13th peak, Lord of the Qigong lineage. The youngest 7th tier in living memory, walking around with an 8th tier world humming in his chest, and the coordinates of the spirit realm folded in his back pocket like a spare key. The aliens have sworn in committee that I must not be allowed to grow. They've said it twice now, and both times paid for the privilege of being wrong. The Golden Dragon star region has put me on its list of negligible wells. Somewhere above every sky I've visited, a spirit realm full of immortal ancestors is nervously honoring a contract signed with a little friend they classified as a once-in-an-era junior. Every single one of them is working from my old file. The farm boy, the failed examinee, the 4th tier with some promise, the well water. The conference votes were still being counted when I felt it, the gate, deep behind my eyes, warm and bright and fuller than it had ever been, its new fuel line still humming from the battlefield crack. A 6th mark glowing on the doorframe with a Heaven's Home address on it. Room for a 7th. Ask the river, next century, what happened to the man they mistook for a well. Better yet, ask the ocean. It's me. It was always me.